met a Gypsy.
Sweet.
Skin Man. We're getting it done. I'm stoked to have you in the studio, dude.
We've been hyping this up for a little while.
Yeah, I think just between us, we've just been quite excited. I don't know that many people know that we've had this plan, but we have had this plan for ages.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this, pre-COVID, and I think, just exactly that. Like, COVID stopped this from happening, so it's good to finally be here.
Dude, no, I'm stoked. It's just cool to see because we haven't even really spoke that much.
No, we haven't.
Before we've even done it, so.
Yeah, I think we've met twice and then just chatted on Instagram a little bit here and there. So yeah.
Just you're one of those guys, but it was just instant homies. I was like,
oh, absolutely.
Skin Man's he's the guy.
How long had you been training for at that first seminar? It hadn't even been a year, had it?
Nah, it would have been almost 2 years. I
almost
reckon.
2 years? Yeah.
I don't know, because I didn't have my blue belt yet, though.
No, you didn't.
So I think it took me 2 years to get my blue belt.
But you were right into it at the time. I remember that. You've taken to Jiu Jitsu. And it's really cool to see where you've gone now. Because when was we were just talking before about nationals.
Yeah, so that would have been...
You would have been blue belt then. You weren't blue belt then either.
No, I was still white belt then. Yeah, I was a white belt for a long time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But then you were absolutely killing it at white belt.
No, it was good.
Yeah,
it was a good little run. And then I got hurt. I broke my hip last year.
Did you really?
Yeah. So last year was the worst year of jiu-jitsu for me. So I crashed a Harley in Vietnam. And I popped my shoulder out. So I was on the road and I just hit a bit of diesel going around a turn.
Yep.
And then bike skidded out. I hit the shoulder. So I tore my rotator cuff. So there was 4 months in that. So I got back and that was sort of right at the start of COVID. That was in February. So then as I got back to training, the gym shut down.
Yep.
So I was just doing the backyard shit. And then July, I broke my hip.
Far out.
Yeah, it's just been since then, it's just been a rough old road. But it's crazy, man. When I don't know if I've said this on here, but when I hit the fucking ground in Vietnam, I just face first into the thing, out a full face helmet on, my first thought was, fuck jiu-jitsu.
You're I can't go to training, not,
yeah,
I might have surgery.
Yeah.
I might have to completely can everything I had planned on this trip. It's the jiu-jitsu. Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing with when COVID goes in. It's you realize
I can't train.
I can't do what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
This is it, and it's now suddenly gone. So, yeah,
yeah,
I think that's
relate.
That's what I think when people talk about jiu-jitsu is an obsession.
Yeah.
It's an obsession. People often talk about jiu-jitsu saved my life. But obsessions are unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I feel that's almost a interesting example of that. Of so much can be going on in the world. We're talking about a global pandemic, and I'm just thinking, I can't go to training. I was working on a triangle.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get to try it for a couple of months now.
Yeah, you are right though. It is bizarre, but I think that you are right. Anything can be an addiction, and then that addiction, it can either be a feature or a bug of the system.
Absolutely.
And for you, your obsession with jiu-jitsu is a feature.
Yeah.
For me, it's almost a bug because it's it takes away time from other shit that I don't I don't get paid for jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's something very intrinsic about it and very important where it's I literally feel I know I have to go. Nothing else will work. Nothing functions around this if I don't go.
Absolutely. I think even on the quote unquote professional aspect of jiu-jitsu, there's still an unhealthy obsession there. Mikhail and I often joke about the fact that just to sort of parody what commonly gets said is just jiu-jitsu ruined my life.
Yeah.
Even when we're making money off jiu-jitsu, it's if I put this amount of effort into any other pursuit,
dude, 100%.
Just anything. I feel jiu-jitsu is a very... I think it's really growing, and it's great to be there where jiu-jitsu is growing. For example, with classic jiu-jitsu this weekend, it's great to see more professional events that are putting on fantastic shows that are going to be able to reward the fan and the competitor. I think, not long before this though, jiu-jitsu is very much an unrewarding pursuit, at least in terms of, being able to set yourself up long term. You look at the extreme example of highest paid athletes is the football in America. That's a serious career opportunity there.
Yeah.
And you see guys really chase after that because if they can make it, they're absolutely set for life.
Generational wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. While jiu-jitsu doesn't have that yet. So it's interesting to sort of see where that's going and see it really become like a spectator sport and something that like people are really like, keen to watch. So that's where I think we'll really see like a turn in like that unhealthy obsession with jiu-jitsu, where it really like it truly does become like a healthy obsession rather than like, I'm obsessing, like, I'm spending my entire life pursuing this and not getting rewarded for it.
Yeah, and it's got a way of completely taking over your brain.
Absolutely.
Like I love Lachlan so much because I always know what's on his mind.
Oh, for
I
sure.
never have to read that dude ever. It's just jiu-jitsu.
He's
just always thinking about jiu-jitsu.
I remember
It'd be the same with you.
Oh, for sure. I remember one time we would travel up to Sydney for a seminar, and so we were just sitting there chilling out together, and like it's just dead silence. Like there's no small talk, nothing. And he just looks at me and he goes, "The Wrestling World Championships is on. Do you want to watch that?" And I was like, "Sure." And then we sat in silence and watched wrestling. Like he just wants to, like, he just thinking about grappling, just wants to watch grappling. I think we ended up talking about like techniques. Like we started talking about like, like one of the wrestlers, Yazdani, just like his underhook throw by, like, but like again, we're still just talking about grappling.
You're just living in the meta.
Absolutely.
Which is, it's pretty cool though. Like
for sure.
That's something that's so, like, there's an obvious reward there. And I think that I've spoke about this with Lockie, but I know for me, so like I use the riding as my example because essentially I'm a black belt in motocross.
Yeah.
Like I've done it 20 plus years. So it's like, I'm not the best black belt. I'm not a black belt world champion, but I'm a dude that would be a black belt in that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But so I go to the track and I put in X amount of effort. I don't yield X return.
No,
if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But in jiu-jitsu, it's like if I watch 8 hours worth of a DVD, an instructional, I'm like really focused and I'm really in on that. I go to the gym, I literally get that back.
Yeah.
There's no like disparity there. There's no, like, I'd have to work for fucking months on a bike to see, progress in that same fashion.
Like to glean any sort of progress from that. Have you found over time that for you in jiu-jitsu that is slowing down? Like have you recognized any of that yet where, like new content doesn't necessarily like translate into, new technique or anything like that? Just because I'm interested. Like,
yeah, I've I feel like I've still got so much shit to learn because, like, so my philosophy around jiu-jitsu when I first started was, and I've said the analogy on here a couple of times, but I feel like this traditional way that you learn jiu-jitsu, if you don't invest in your own learning, and if you just go to class and that's it, you don't really watch shit on YouTube or whatever, you go into this dark room that you don't know anything about, and then you get given a laser pointer.
Yep.
And then on the wall of the dark room is like reverse De La Hiva, collar sleeve, opposite collar sleeve, far side underhook, near side underhook. And it's just like spray painted around this room. And the first day that you get your torch, it's like, oh, we're doing half guard sweeps, and your laser pointer, and you're like, there it is on the wall over there. The rest of the room's still black. Black belt, he can fucking see like daylight.
Yeah.
But you can't see shit. So, and then you go in this technique, next technique, next technique, next technique. And you try and remember what it is in this room. You know what I mean? So my idea was, when I started jiu-jitsu, I was like, okay, I'm going to binge everything. If jiu-jitsu's a Netflix season, I'm binge watching jiu-jitsu. So I read Jiu-Jitsu University, the Sanjay Ribeiro book. Literally bought it on Amazon, the first jiu-jitsu class that I did. I logged onto Amazon and I was like, what's the book about jiu-jitsu? Like, I'll just get that.
Yep.
So then I got that. It arrived the first class Monday. It arrived Thursday. I read it cover to cover over the weekend. Got back into class. And then the next, then I was like, all right, what are all the DVDs? And then I just didn't try and remember each technique. I didn't try and implement. I just wanted to see all of jiu-jitsu, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's very easy to go down the wrong path with learning any pursuit, and that's no different with jiu-jitsu. But I think that the Jiu-Jitsu University book, that's a really strong start. I
actually don't think that was that beneficial.
Really?
Looking back in retrospect,
why's that?
Maybe it was. I don't know. Because I'm visual, really visual.
Okay, yep.
So that's why the DVDs, I get the people give me shit because I just watch all of it. I'm just like, new one comes out, I get it, I watch it, put it up here, and then that's it. It's like, it's sort of, yeah, it just fills in that room essentially for me. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know that the reading, but more it was just the immersion. Like I was just getting my head around all of it, because I just feel like if you understand, correct me if I'm wrong as a world-class black belt, but I feel like the concepts underneath jiu-jitsu are more important than the techniques themselves. I feel like you could spend years just on the concepts before you even learn like techniques, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there. So
I'd love you to hear your.
But we can link up the two things you're just talking about there. So we're talking about this idea of like starting out on this jiu-jitsu journey and sort of like how to direct our learning, and with what you're talking about with the book, like whether or not like you're a visual learner or anything like that. The benefit of like say something like that book, or like having like they have like I think they actually have an instructional version of their book as well, so you do get like I think that might have come out later. But like the advantage of that there is like you get to have like a strong sense of direction as to like overall what should jiu-jitsu look like. As opposed to like you turn up to your first class, they show you say for example like a Toriando pass, something like that, like to mount an Americana. Why were you doing that thing with their legs? Why do I have to do this from mount? Why can't I just like stand in front of them and grab the Americana from where I am? So when you get like given like these little bits in isolation like that, you need to really I think implement it. You need an overall perspective on what jiu-jitsu is meant to be. So providing context for a lot of these positions. So when I start out teaching white belts, for example, what I do is I'll introduce them to like say mount and rear mount, like controlling them from the front, like when I'm sitting on top of them, and like controlling them from behind them. And the first thing I do is like I'll say mount them, for example, and I'll say try and get out. And obviously they can't. Like I've done this with even a white belt that's like 110 kilos, for example, and like they can't get out. And I go, okay, you mount me, and I'll even say to them, you can punch me if you want to. Not because I think I'm any sort of striking expert, but I'm confident in my
to demonstrate jiu-jitsu.
Exactly. I know that like if they want to keep mount, they need to put their hands on the floor. So like I don't mind saying like, okay, you can like try and slap me, punch me, whatever from this position, and I'll be out of mount in seconds. And then we do the same drill from the back. And so I explain to them like, okay, if this is what I can do from you from this position, like these are the two probably like worst fundamental positions in jiu-jitsu you can end up in. So our goal is to now avoid getting put in those positions, and we're trying to attain those positions. And then that's when we start giving context for the guard, because then you can bring it back a little bit and say like, okay, I want to get to those positions and I want to avoid getting in those positions. The guard is basically the barrier between that world and not being there.
I love the way that you're explaining that.
Thank you.
That's definitely fits in my head perfectly.
Exactly. So it makes sense. Like that's applicable. Like not just like white belt jiu-jitsu. That's applicable to like black belt jiu-jitsu. It's just the problem is when you have like say black belt instructors, because they've been training for so long. I think they lose a lot of that like that fundamental sort of direction to jiu-jitsu, because they're just doing jiu-jitsu. Like they don't have to think like, okay, like why am I passing the guard? While a white belt, when they start out, they need to know why they're passing the guard, because otherwise they're not going to value it. So I think having a strong direction early on in the journey is really, really important.
The other thing for me, so the big thing why reading the book I think was real helpful for me is because jiu-jitsu is a language. So I can, like, we in this podcast will literally speak a language that if you don't know jiu-jitsu, then you're going to hear words that might as well be French to you. De la Hiva, reverse De la Hiva. You've got all of these like clock choke, loop choke. You've got all of these things where it's just like that. It's a concept that is linked to a physical action. So to me, I was just like really wanted to understand the vernacular, just so that when I was in the gym and I heard black belts or brown belts and purple belts talk, I could at least even put an ear on that conversation. Because I think like, how many times would you go into the gym, first year, 2 years, before you just start to, it'd be like walking into a Russian bar for 2 years and try to pick up some Russian. That's kind of essentially what you're sort of doing, So I was just like, I feel like if I read the book and learn the language as well, that was like kind of another thought process. But to get back to the analogy, like, what I wanted to do was initially learn jiu-jitsu by not having a laser pointer that I got given and trying to connect the dots. What I wanted to do was just have a real small candle and then set it in the middle of the room and then just keep building up, you know, because it's like I'm like, oh, I could see all the big words. I can't read the fine print, the smaller words. It's still too dark.
Yep.
But I kind of can see the room. I understand how big the room is. Understand how much that there is to fill in.
You know where the corners of the room are. Like you get a bit more like overall like
just general
awareness.
context of what we're here to do.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important, because then it makes it easier. Then if you understand overall like where you're meant to be heading with your jiu-jitsu, then you can really start to like self-direct your own learning.
Yeah.
Like if you know, for example, like, okay, like we talked about like that basic like battle of the guard, essentially, where like, you know, like guard player versus guard passer. You understand like there's almost like a tug of war that happens there, where like, you know, like you're trying to drag it further in one end or the other. Then you can start like looking at like, okay, well, I can do these parts here. I haven't learnt this part in class yet, where like, what do I do when I end up in this position and things like that. So if you have an overall perspective of where it's meant to go, you can start directing your own learning. We also talked about, I think you mentioned concepts, and we got a little bit away from that. I was going to link that up. So, and I think concepts ties in with what you're talking about in terms of wanting to have like a bigger picture of jiu-jitsu, because concepts is essentially, I think realistically, like concepts is, you know, not all that different from details. It's simply a matter of like what layer of like jiu-jitsu you're looking at. Like if you're starting to get down to like that micro layer versus like the macro, but like so you can get more or less specific about, say, like different aspects of jiu-jitsu as you want. It's just we have like the two ends of the spectrum where we have like concepts and details. But I think there's a lot in there. But I think concepts is a great way to start, because it's so broad, and I think you can do a lot more with concepts than you can with details.
Yeah.
I
feel like concepts first for me anyway.
Absolutely.
Concepts first, details second.
Absolutely. The problem is I think you see a lot of the times people say concepts when really what they mean is, I have a vague idea of how this is meant to work, but I can't really give you a clear definition. So that's why like I like the idea of concepts, but I generally don't talk about them that way. Like I think.
How would you describe the?
Yeah. So I generally try and like, even though like overall I actually think the two things are the same, I try and steer away from like terminology that's already got a certain connotation.
Sort of almost like downplay.
Exactly.
Like the I guess downplay it a little bit, or just like reduce it down to something a little bit less than what it is, maybe.
Exactly. Like, and even if you treat it in a way that it doesn't, there's already the connotation there that concepts is meant to be vague, rather than clearly defining. So like I try and talk about it, even though it's the same thing, is like I talk about having like a principled approach to jiu-jitsu. So you know, in the car before, like Tom and I were talking about, you know, like attacking from guard, for example. An idea of like a concept or a principle would be, you know, how to create opportunity to attack your opponent's upper body and lower body. So one concept or principle we have there is, when my partner's head is in front of their hips, I'm going to be attacking the upper body. When their head is over their hips, I'm going to attack the legs. So you can get very, very clear with that definition and give like a strong sense of direction to like what someone's trying to do. I think like, you know, an example of like when people would talk about a similar idea is concepts would be, they'd say, oh, you know, you attack the legs to attack, like, to expose the upper body, and you attack the upper body to expose the legs. Like it's not there's not a clear enough definition there. Where if we can talk about, you know, this idea of like head in front of the hips versus head over the hips, we have a very clear line as to when we should be attacking one or the other. And so even though like I'd say that's an example of a concept, I just say principle because, or a principle or a rule, just because to get away from like that idea of like concepts being vague. So to answer the original question is, I just think there's still so much to learn, but I would say that I feel like there are areas in jiu-jitsu where I'm like really, really proficient now. Absolutely.
Where I think that my knowledge of a certain like position, the mechanics of certain things, like for triangles, for example.
I was going to say triangles, like you're a weapon with triangles. Absolutely.
That would be like my thing, where I've done this so much, and I've worked on it so much, I've studied it so much, I've drilled it so much. So that would be something where I would say like I'd feel comfortable talking to anybody like, oh, this is what I do here, this is what I do here, this is, and not saying that that's the best way to do it, but I would feel okay about telling anybody that, oh, this is how I do it, you know what I mean? Absolutely. But then there'd be some shit where I'm like, fuck, I don't know, like that ain't my shit. That's
not bad though. Like you see this on multiple levels of this idea of having maybe not a disjointed like game, but maybe like, you know, varying skill levels of skill sets. And you see that at the highest level of jiu-jitsu too. Like anyone that's going to be a world champion, they're the best in the world at least one area of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And then you can even what's his name? He wrote the book The Art of Learning. I think he started out as a chess world champion.
Yeah. I know.
He trains with Marcelo Garcia. So
I really want to read that book.
It's an interesting read. It's a lot more anecdotes, I'd say, if anything, rather than really about how to actually learn something.
Yeah.
But I think the lesson in there is really important, where and we can apply this to even like he talks about in terms of like, you know, getting really, really good at chess, for example, and then getting really, really good at like push hands, and then getting good at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And you can apply that to even just jiu-jitsu, where this idea of, you know, on like a lower level, if you can get really good at one area of jiu-jitsu, you understand a little bit more about how you learn, and then you can apply that to the other parts of jiu-jitsu. So like you can start learning like, okay, this is how I dissected, or like, you know, I learned this part of my game. I can dissect that and then start applying that to the rest of jiu-jitsu. And that's why you'll see like as you start doing jiu-jitsu more and more, you actually start to learn at a faster rate than what you did at white belt, because you start to absorb the information a little bit better. You know how to actually like, you know, practice it yourself, like whether or not you prefer to be drilling, doing more positional training, and then you can start like using that to actually like you know, invent areas of your game. Typically a lot of grappling is reverse engineering, but when you get to a certain point, if you understand enough about jiu-jitsu, then you can start engineering things. Like for example, I'd say that like the skill set I'm most known for is leg locks.
Yeah.
But there was something I recognized watching like ADCC and like different like no-gi grappling events at like a high level, like a couple of years ago, was how important being good at the front headlock position was. Like, you know, playing the dilemma of like a guillotine and a back take.
Yeah.
And so because I knew how I learned like the other areas of jiu-jitsu, that was an area where I need to learn that. I'm going to make myself learn that. And so what I do, like, I can go straight into that. And immediately what I recognized is, you know, say, for example, we're talking about principles. If I can force my opponent to commit his hands to the floor from a front headlock, I can start going in on strangles. If I can force my opponent to commit his elbow to the floor from the front headlock, I can go for the back.
Yeah.
And generally what happens there is that they'll defend their neck and put their elbows on the floor, which means they go for the back.
Yeah.
But if they're defending their back, so they're in a more athletic position, they go hands to the floor, I can start attacking their neck because they're not defending their neck anymore.
Yeah.
Just to tie in together, it's probably like a couple of different things we talked about there.
Yeah.
So
so did you find that it was like a quicker process for you to learn like a front headlock system, basically just applying how you already learned the rest of your game?
Absolutely. It's like, because I was able to take that approach to it and take a very a very deliberate approach to introducing that into my game, it's probably actually one of my best areas of my jiu-jitsu. Like it's part of my A game for sure.
That's sick.
Yeah, so
you probably wouldn't have said that a year ago.
No, absolutely not. Like I would have said.
And to think that you could create a new A game within your jiu-jitsu that's gone for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And then in a year add something to the A game like that. Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think like when we're talking about like these different approaches to learning, like, because I think I was able to do that because I'd spent such a disproportionate amount of time on
one thing.
Exactly, on leg locks specifically, and not just like just doing leg locks, but trying to understand them. It made it easier for me to try and like invent something else.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying like I invented this idea of like the front headlock dilemma, but like I was able to like look at what was working in competition, recognize what's like the prevailing idea there, and then start like, you know, engineering that into my game.
Do you work on stuff in blocks?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
will you work on like a very specific part of your game and without except, so to give you an example, so for 2021 I've just committed completely to guard retention.
Absolutely.
So in my head I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of blue belt working on guard retention. I know I've got a bunch of submissions that I can do from guard, and now, because in my head my theory is like, okay, what fucks my training at jiu-jitsu? Side control, or like being mounted side control, or someone having my back. Okay, that to me just kills learning. Like I can't be offensive, I can't be creative, I can't work on any of the things that I want to do. I'm completely at the mercy of the other person. They're doing what they want to do. Yeah, I can practice escapes and fucking all that shit, but I'm spending time here. So if I get luck of the draw, big brown belt, passes my guard, and I'm under him for 3 minutes defending myself, that's kind of a waste of time in my eyes. Obviously that's good skills to have, but I'm like, let's keep let's stay on like
Oh,
the
for
front
sure.
area of like actually being able to do shit that I want to do.
Oh, absolutely.
So I was like, righto, this is just guard retention season. Got the DVDs, started watching it, started watching matches. When I rolled with Levi, I was just straight guard retention. Like, I don't want to know about Varambolos. I don't want to know about nothing. Just give me some tips for guard retention. Roll with Ari, same thing, guard retention. And then I go into the gym, and as soon as I get past, I'm pretty much just down to get choked. I'm just like, whatever, let's just reset and go again. So, but for this whole year, I'm just not going to waver off that. Comps, I'm just going to do comps, whatever. It is what it is. A, try not to get past. B, try and win. But that is how I want to spend. And I've never done that before.
Yep.
I've sort of learned different things and focused on different areas. But this is like the first time I've ever just blocked out literally a year of training for one specific skill set.
That's good. You've certainly picked the right people to try and learn that from.
Yeah.
Like I think, if you're going to look at like the people that have like the best guard retention in the world, Levi and Ari are certainly it. And like they're certainly the people that can articulate it as well, which is, I think, really important. And I think what you're talking about is really, really important overall. Funnily enough, 2020 for me was also a lot of time spent on guard retention. Bit different to guard retention that they're doing. I spent a lot more time focused on aggressive guard retention. So instead of trying to recover my guard and attack, like trying to attack off the guard retention.
Yeah.
But like overall, still the same sort of thing.
But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So with what you're talking about there, that's it's interesting. Part of it is time management. Like, how much time do you have to actually train during the week, etc. Like it affects sort of like how long you'd spend on a given topic. I think one of the mistakes people make though is they think, okay, I'm going to allot this certain amount of time, and then by the end of it, I'm going to have like black belt guard retention. Like you do want to like I set like a certain amount of time where like by the end of it, you're going to be happy with it. Like it doesn't have to be perfect by the end of it, but and that sort of leads into what I was going to talk about in regards to learning. And this is something that Lockie got really into probably about 2 or 3 years ago at Absolute, and he ran a little study in the gym on it. It came from some research. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so it came from some research that came out of university. And one of the big things that really helps with learning is actually taking a break from it. So the conclusion that we ended up drawing from that is like a way to actually implement like this research into your drilling. And the way that I generally get my students to do it is I want them to pick 3 areas of their jiu-jitsu, and then they'll work on that for say 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that week to week, like you should be doing some drilling in those areas. The way it would work is, say, for example, like your first week, just drill areas 1 and 2. And then in your second week, drill areas 2 and 3. Then week 3, you go 3 and 1. Like the idea is like cycle it.
Yeah.
So that way you'll probably end up spending about 2 weeks at a time on one given topic, but 1 week off it.
Yeah.
And so that way, because what the research shows is that if you give yourself a chance to like sleep on information and take a break from it, you process and absorb a lot more of the information. And it's sort of how like cramming for a test works.
Yeah.
Is that like if you try and if I did 1 hour of study a day for a week, that's going to have a much bigger impact on my ability to absorb the information than if I try
5 hours.
Exactly, or even 8 hours in one go.
Yeah.
Like if I do 8 hours in one go and I'm expected to know the information tomorrow, like you might remember an hour of that.
Yeah.
It's sort of I do it similarly sort of as well with like seminars. Like you don't want to go for too long on a seminar. Like if you do 3 or 4 hours of like just solid information, you're probably going to remember the first hour.
Yeah.
But if you do 2 hours like of solid information, you'll probably remember the whole 2 hours because you haven't overloaded yourself.
I literally finished a book this morning called Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Yep.
And he's a computer engineer he's a professor at Georgetown University. And he wrote this book on basically, it's super self-explanatory, deep work, but he talks about the benefit, like the cognitive benefits of deep work, the benefits over shallow work, some definitions between deep and shallow work. We actually been doing deep work sessions this week. We set like a 2-hour timer on our phone, put it in front, turn no notifications, no internet, no nothing, like 0 distractions.
Yep.
The only distraction you can have is drinking water or taking notes.
Yep.
And that's it. But the studies show, to your point, the studies showed in these kind of research that he did that 2 hours was pretty much like peak cognitive concentration time. So you really could not go over that. There'd be diminishing returns after about 2 hours. So he was saying, you structure to these 2 hour blocks of work. So it sort of speaks exactly to what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, my end of it is pretty much only anecdotal evidence, but like teaching seminars, that's what I found. Yeah, like I mean, if you don't have the ability to have like it's one of those things where like anecdotal evidence, yes, you don't want to rely on it, but in the absence of any other evidence,
go with it.
It's at least something.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to go like, oh, I've got anecdotal evidence, but I don't have empirical evidence. Like I should just chuck out the anecdotal evidence too. It's like, well, yeah, like go work with what you've got.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's interesting, the research coming out like more and more about like, the importance of both like sleep and like the way that it affects us cognitively, and as well as like how it relates to like our ability to learn, and the research coming out about learning. So it's cool to like see that get implemented into things that I'm obsessed with. Yeah.
Well, the cool thing, I think with jiu-jitsu and learning is like, probably one of the most beneficial things in my life, because I have a life outside of jiu-jitsu, but I think jiu-jitsu is honestly like the crucible where that's like the most living I do.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's the most concentration that I have. Physically, it's the most demanding thing that I do. Mentally, I'm putting a lot of effort into it. So I think that it becomes like this small, it is a small part of my life in terms of the amount that I'm actually able to go there. But I think that small percentage of time actually helps lay a foundation for how I do everything else. And, to understand the way that I learn, to understand just your body, the physicality, dealing with losing, when you're a competitive person. Like I'm competitive every single role I ever do. It's like very, very, very hard for me to like not, except unless I'm with chicks, then I don't give a fuck. But for me, like that's honestly like a lesson in itself. Like I rate my training sessions on mindset at times too, because it's like, you're actually being a fucking dick, dude. Like, you know what I mean? I have to tell myself like, you don't need to win this. You don't need to put your body on the line for literally no reason other than ego. So there's it's such like everything is heightened in that little. Even though 20% of my time is spent on jiu-jitsu, it's like such an intense 20% that then bleeds into like the rest of my life.
Absolutely. Like jiu-jitsu is, I feel like even when you can only train once or twice a week, it's a very raw experience.
Yeah. Like
in just like so many ways. I feel like it really does. Like people often talk about like this idea of like jiu-jitsu gets rid of ego. I think it strips away. Yeah, I don't think it does. I think it strips away a lot of filters like that you like people like sort of put up to like about like what sort of person they are. But I think like with something like jiu-jitsu, because it's just such a different sort of environment. You get to see a little bit more about what sort of person you really are.
Yeah, I think that I definitely don't think that it strips you of your ego.
Greatest lie ever told.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I think it puts your ego front and center for you and other people. Yeah. And you can either deal with it and get better. And I would say I definitely have gotten better over time. But also you could still be a fucking egomaniac, but then everyone's just aware of it. You know what I mean? It's almost like it doesn't get rid of the ego, it just exposes it to everybody.
No one ever has aspirations to be the best in the world at something without an ego.
Yeah.
I think if someone truly has no ego, it's like they're not going to be a remarkable person. It's like similar, you'll see someone like Dan Carlin talking about like to be a great leader, you don't have to be a good person. That's not really like a correlation there, which is kind of unfortunate. To be like the best at jiu-jitsu, you're not necessarily a good person. So I think ego is important in a lot of those aspects, because if like you really had no ego, you didn't care if you really lost at training. While to get good, you need to care if you lose.
Yeah. But it has to be in like productive constraints.
Absolutely.
And I think that learning what is productive, what's unproductive.
Yeah.
That's probably like the hardest lesson, because I think that the ego thing, like you for sure have to have an ego. Everybody has an ego, like you calling yourself Jeremy, that is the ego. Like you are self-referencing. So
Absolutely.
Anytime you're self-referencing, you're living in a state of ego. So it's inescapable. Like
Absolutely.
There's no way around that. But it's like I can't remember who said it, but it's just make it an ego function. Like you're selfing. Like it is this process that you're doing, and it needs to be a function that attributes to like a greater whole.
Exactly. Like because people can have an ego, but if you can't do away with it, but maybe you can temper it so we can feed it later, essentially. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to accept the fact that I lost now and not chuck a tantrum so I can get better than this guy and then kick his ass later.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's really how it plays out. Rather than if you can't temper it at all and you just go, oh, you know, this guy just beat me. I'm just going to do the exact same thing I just did over and over and beat him at the thing. Like, you know, I'm going to prove that like what I was doing was the right thing. And it's like, that's an example of like an unhealthy ego.
Yeah.
And how that just doesn't help you.
Yeah. I'd say that, like, one of the things, and this is what I don't have in jiu-jitsu is time.
Yep.
Like, I've only got a few years in the game, nearly 4 years in the game.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I mean, I guess that is quite a bit of time, but
So it's a
over,
lot.
you know, to someone like yourself, there's literally thousands more roles. There's thousands more hours, you know,
Yep.
that there is like 4 years is still in like an infancy. And I think that, one of the things to really work on is just knowing like when it's okay to lose, just purely for like the body aspect.
Yep.
Because I know myself, like one of my faults is I'll just go hard as fuck. Like every round, if someone's coming at me, it doesn't matter how much better, how much bigger, I'm going hard as fuck. And at least if I go out, I'm going out on my shield.
Yep.
And that's great in a perfect world, but the reality is the next day I wake up, I'm sore as fuck, I'm tired, I'm hurting, and then you go to train the next day, and then you're compounding these, you know. So I think that is the thing where I think I really need to learn.
Yep.
And I think a lot of other people, that's probably a challenge a lot of other people have as well that are super competitive,
Yep.
is just going in there and using training as training.
Absolutely.
And not like, if someone's bigger, someone's going hard, if I'm in a position where I'm about to get past and I'm really trying not to get past, but there's a lot of pressure on my ribs and I'm stacked and I'm upside down and I'm twisting it, then it's just like, dude, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, are you here to learn? Are you here to win? Like,
I sometimes still have to learn that lesson. There's times where it's like, yeah, like, especially like leading up to like competition, let's say, like,
well, I feel like it's more forgivable then. But if it's just like just all day, 24/7.
If it's for nothing.
Yeah.
I think it's almost important in some ways though, early in jiu-jitsu, to take those beatings. Like, it's almost like a Fight Club type moment where it's like, you need to learn what it's like to take a beating, like badly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because like yeah, exactly that. Like, I think like every teenage guy's had like a Fight Club poster or something like in their bedroom wall, and like, and that idea of like, you know, how much can you know about yourself if you like haven't really been like beaten badly.
Yeah. Oh, I totally would agree with that. And yeah, that too can become like a bit of a badge of honor that you know that you can take a beating and still come back.
But I think if you like, you hang on to that, like that feeling, like for too long, where you're just like, yeah, like every day is just a day to get beaten up, then that's when that's an issue. But you need to know what it feels like, I think, early in jiu-jitsu, so you can work past it and then be productive.
Yeah.
Otherwise exactly that, like every role has to be a war.
Yeah. And I think that that's just not conducive to longevity.
No.
And yeah, so I think that's probably I honestly think that my just like general mindset of training is the thing that I like, as well as guard retention. Like, I'm literally working those things because you sort of almost as well, like, I think I've found that working this one specific skill set has almost taken the pressure off and like given me an out to where I can like mentally, it's fine to lose. I'm working on this shit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I don't know whether that's like a good or a bad thing, but
no, I think it is like I think you learn to value different things that will come up in rolling, and you start like looking to like, you know, like get a bit more like, you know, almost specific in open rolling. Like you're almost like hunting for like, you know, those positional training rounds within a roll then.
Yeah.
So you can try these things out. But I think that's also why positional training in itself is quite important, because then if you have the opportunity to actually do positional training with a lot of different people, then like you can just make rolling as like a way of like putting it all together. Like if you talk to like, you know, my coach Lachlan, he thinks that, you know, one of the most important ways to train, if he was going to pick one way to train, it would be positional training. Because I think like rolling's good, but it can be very like, it's very undirected. And I think if you have the ability to compartmentalize a lot of training, that can be really productive. And that's one of the things like when I'm coaching, like I want to spend a lot more time on that. Or at least like with like the students is like making sure that they're doing a lot more positional training. So they're really compartmentalizing a role and they have clear definitions of what a win and a loss is from a position.
Yeah.
So that way now when it comes to competition, then like if you say, for example, like you're in top half guard and like in the middle of a role, like you have a very clear direction of where you're gonna go, and that goes back to what we're talking about with like having an overall sense of jiu-jitsu, like overall like sense of direction in jiu-jitsu and concepts and things like that. Like I think that all ties together really nicely.
When did you start coaching?
I started coaching maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been really fortunate. I've had some fantastic coaches while coming up, like my old coach Luke Beston, for example. He's been in jiu-jitsu for a long time, and he's had some great coaches, and he's an absolute martial arts nerd, and he's very much into like making sure like like looking at the research and just trying to like absorb everything from everywhere. Then also like my other coach from that gym, Grant Bradshaw, like he's a high school teacher as well, but just overall like a very charismatic and like very understanding sort of person, like a great sort of role model for
like
people.
A coach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, and I think like they were both people that had like a great influence on me. And then as well as like Lachlan Giles as well, very analytical. Craig, fantastic coach as well, and also Mikhail Yahaya. Like I've been very lucky to have some fantastic coaches while coming up in jiu-jitsu, and they've all given me a little bit of something for me to take away from. Like sort of take away from them and like add it into my own coaching. And then as well, like I spent a lot of time looking at other coaches in like mainly in jiu-jitsu, but you'll see it in other sports. Like say for example, you look at jiu-jitsu, you got like someone like Jimmy Pedro, for example, like who's a judo coach, and then even I actually don't know what his last name is, but it's shit, I'm blanking on his name. There's a guy in Sydney. He's the judo coach for like the Olympic side. I don't know what his full name is.
Yeah, right.
But but like I'm trying to like draw like
inspiration from those guys
from everywhere as well. Like like looking at like guys like Eddie Cummings, John Danaher, and also like trying to look at like what's going on with their team in relation to the coach, because I think that's really important to see. Like say for example, you want to look at like the Henzo Gracie side, like John Danaher, for example. Everyone plays the game that he teaches, so clearly he's doing something right as a coach.
Yeah.
While like some people, like they're really good at jiu-jitsu and they're a coach, but you don't necessarily see like the jiu-jitsu coming from that particular person.
I
know exactly. I won't name particular gyms because I think it's a bit impolite, but like you can look at like certain gyms and you can see like, okay, none of the students play that game.
Yeah.
Like which is, so it says like, okay, maybe they're not a great coach, but they are still good at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And so they may be better. It's better off like watching sort of what they're doing on the mats and not so much like looking at their coaching.
Yeah.
But even then, like it's good to sort of like do that and look at sort of like what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, comparing it. Like you almost like the same way like you learn about jiu-jitsu, like you're trying to like just understand how to be a coach.
Broad strokes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just feel like that approach, at least for me anyway, like it really helped just paint like a clear picture, and then just to not feel lost.
Absolutely.
in the like just how vast it is, but yeah, I don't know whether it's people, it's so individual how people learn. Like, I just don't know whether some people that probably would be the worst idea for them. Oh yeah,
and that's one of the things, like one of the challenges in my coaching at the moment is like I have like say for example like grappling education, because I'm in Sydney at the moment. Like I'm teaching there during the day, and I get like the same group of people pretty much every day in my classes. Like I'm teaching regularly there quite a few times, and so one of the challenges is making sure like, okay, I'm running like a training session for everyone in the room, but like I need to make sure it is for everyone in the room rather than like 99% of people, and this is one person who's like maybe their approach to learning is a little bit different. Like
that is the hardest thing about academies in general. For sure. Though. And I think that, you just can't, like, there has to be a generalized approach. Unless you're just going to get privates from somebody, like, you kind of have to accept that you're not going to be able to learn the way that you want to learn. Like, you might luck into it in the fact that the style that gets taught at the school perfectly fits you. Yeah. That you'd then be the exception, not the rule, though,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things I really try and keep in mind with my coaching as well. Like, the way I structure a lesson, I try and like set it up in a way that
How do you structure a lesson? Like, what would like an average lesson for you look like?
Sure. At the moment, it's changing a little bit because in Sydney at the moment, there's the ADCC Nationals competition happening. So just making sure I'm adjusting the training session to gear it up for the people that are going to be competing in that.
What's the ADCC Nationals?
Sure. So it's basically like you have like the ADCC World Championships and then also ADCC trials that qualify for that. The Nationals is basically like a locally
it's just a
run
one-off.
event.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
exactly. So they've got that happening and that's quite different to a lot of the competitions that
is that under the ADCC rule set?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah. So and exactly that, like it's under the ADCC rule set, so it plays out a little bit differently to a lot of other competitions. So we're adjusting the training for that. But say, for example, the training session I'm running for that is we'll start out, we don't do as much drilling beforehand. Like I generally get them to do probably about an hour of drilling, like at the start, and spend a lot, like probably like maybe not many more techniques, but more time spent drilling it. So instead now we're only doing like maybe like 2 techniques at the start. It might take about half an hour to get through those techniques. And then we're doing a lot more positional training this time around. And so doing a lot more positions focused around that. And the way we'll typically do it is like we'll pick a position, like one of the important ones I think for ADCC is the turtle position. And so that comes up both off the wrestling situations as well as like off like the ground situations. I think like turtle is like an important like sort of, like that it basically is like, again, like similar we talked about like the guard, like it's one of those barriers between like so we'll spend time on that. And the way
it's like an intermediary position almost.
Exactly.
Where it's like that both people have options.
Exactly. And so that's why I try and keep the position like when we do the positional training, relatively open. So the way I'll run that specifically is that I'll say, for example, we'll start no grips, starting behind your opponent instead of off to the side.
Yeah.
The person on top, their entire goal is to submit their opponent. That's it. Like it's not about taking the back. It's not about mounting them. It's about submitting your opponent, because taking the back is a pathway to submitting your opponent. So they should be seeking that anyway.
Yeah.
But then if you mount your opponent, that's still a win for you. Like, if you get top side control ADCC, that's points. So you're still going, like the points really do reflect like a pathway to like submission.
Yeah.
So people should be going down that pathway anyway if they're thinking about submission.
Yeah.
And so the person on bottom, their entire goal is like their goal is a lot more broadly defined. It's more specifically defined, while like the submission is probably a bit more broad. Person on bottom, their goal is to either completely re-guard. So like if you get put into a half guard situation, we'll still continue. Or if they're able to completely stand up.
Yeah.
Now those would be wins for the bottom player, as well as if they can submit their opponent or reverse them. But like we keep it like relatively broad. I'm not a big fan of positional training ending when, say, for example, you take someone's back and it stops there. Because there's still so much more that happens.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to work on. And I think, when the stakes are like that, it encourages people to work a lot more. So that's one example of positional training that we'll do. And we'll do like a very similar drill for mount, for example. Like we'll start mount, and it's purely the person on top's got to submit their opponent. Person on bottom, complete escape, reversal, submission. And we'll get more specific with other ones. For example, one of the things like Craig recommended to me is in regards to like arm bars, for example, is like, how often rolling do you feel like if you got put in an arm bar, you'd have a chance to work your arm bar defense? Like you personally, like if someone puts you in an arm bar, like how much time do you think from the moment that they have the arm bar to you tapping, do you actually have a chance to work a late escape?
20 seconds max?
From a fully extended armbar?
Oh, from a fully extended...
Yeah, from like an extended... Like maybe a second.
like the position. Yeah. From a fully extended armbar, you don't really have any time.
Yeah, and that's not really a recipe for building confidence in like working a hitchhiker or anything like that.
Yeah.
So one of the drills that we added in recently was starting in an armbar with no grip, with no
pressure.
Your grip's broken.
Yeah.
The person attacking the armbar cannot finish it.
Okay.
They are purely trying to control their opponent for as long as possible.
That's perfect.
So that's very, very, like, that's very specific training. But that's just to get people confident in certain submission defenses, and like, or even if they don't actually know how to do a submission, they start to see sort of where the vulnerabilities are because they're able to move within the position a little bit. It's not a completely realistic drill, but I feel like it teaches the right lessons.
No, yeah, I can totally imagine the benefits of that. Like I started doing that in my head as soon as
exactly.
Like, what the fuck would I do here?
Yeah, exactly. And because normally you just go, I try the hitchhiker, I got armbarred. And you might do that over and over. But if you have a chance to actually explore the position a little bit, like you have more of an opportunity and like a chance to actually feel like if it works or not. Because normally, like let's say for example, you're drilling a technique, implement it in rolling, like you generally have a lot more time to work within that and get a bit more experience there. But if you're working armbar defense, you have like maybe a second every single time.
Yeah.
If you now have have like a full 4 minutes to get comfortable in that position, you can start like actually working your escape.
Yeah.
So that's another example of a position we've added in. So just to go back to what you're originally asking, we'll start out with like maybe about half an hour of drilling for these sessions, and then we'll do a lot of positional training. So typically we're doing turtle, doing mount, maybe even close guard. And then, maybe something specific like that, like starting with the submission and working the submission. And then from there, we'll go on to rolling. And depending on how many people are in the room, like I'll get everyone to start standing. And if they want to play guard, they have to pull guard rather than just like the roll starts and one person's like kind of already sitting.
Yeah, that's me most of the time.
Yeah, see, I'm the same way. Like, and if we start standing, I'm more likely to actually try the wrestling.
Yeah.
But even then, like I might make the decision. No. Yeah, fair enough. One of the other ones that's good to add in as well, specific for ADCC, is stalling drills. And not as in like the person on top like should learn to stall, but more
dealing
for the
with
person
somebody stalling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's quite a physically intensive drill, but that's a good one to add in. And that's an example of like, adding in, positional training tailored for the competitions that are coming up. Yeah. So that one there, we'd run like, say, like 1 or 2 minutes at a time. Person starts on bottom. You're treating it as if you're down 1 point, and you need to make up that point however you want. Person on top, they've got to stall, but they've got to look like they're engaging, so they're not going to get penalized, for example. Like they can't just run across the map because you're gonna get penalized.
Yeah.
So instead, they've got to be like faking engagement. Person on bottom is just trying to work non-stop, and that's much harder to do against an opponent that doesn't want to engage.
That is true.
Yeah, so that's an important drill, and the reason why that's important for ADCC rules is because if you start looking at ADCC rules, if you're a wrestler, you're much more likely to want to have to end up in overtime.
Yeah.
So the idea is like, they might be doing exactly that, or maybe they're trying to get to the points period, for example, and you're trying to submit them from bottom position. Like it's important to know how to overcome that. Gordon Ryan's a fantastic example of someone that knows how to overcome someone stalling by being able to chase them down non-stop.
Yeah.
He's a master at it.
Dude, Gordon fucking Ryan. We could probably do a 3-hour podcast just on Gordon fucking Ryan.
Absolutely, we could.
How much do you think? Well, maybe Tom, for you, how much do you think can you see as an event promoter like a Gordon Ryan effect on like interest or anything like that, or is it too early for you guys to tell? Because, dude, like the Andre Galvao slap thing is just like, I feel like
that's a promoter's dream, isn't it?
I feel like how many 100,000 people knew what jiu-jitsu was just purely because Gordon Ryan slapped Andre Galvao in the face.
Absolutely. That's
insane, dude.
It's not a good look for the sport, but it's a great headline.
It's not a good look for Andre Galvao. It's not a good look for her as well.
You're right.
Because like,
pushing it all over the place.
Dude.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Flo, like I get it, and Flo's doing what they should be doing. Like if you're the dude that, like me, I sit in this room, I look at my stats, I know what's gonna do good, I know what's gonna not do good. Like I want to do better. Like I want to get more views. I want to get more money. Like that, it makes sense.
You're like, how much am I gonna like sell my soul for this?
Yeah, there's some moments where you're just like, but fuck, I wonder, like in that specific example of that Gordon Andre thing, and this is what it was interesting talking to Lockie about it, where it was like, okay, so is good for jiu-jitsu just more mass? Like, do we just have as many people as possible, and whether they're fuckwits or legends, it doesn't really matter. We just need more people in jiu-jitsu. And it's like, shit, he's got a point, because maybe it's worth just attracting good people to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's a tough question. That's a very interesting scenario, and I feel like there's no way I can talk about that, like that specific situation and not piss someone off.
Yeah, true.
So it's
you got to fight these dudes. I never have to fight.
You know what's yeah, exactly, and like it's
I could be armchair quarterback all day.
Yeah, it's I try and like keep those conversations behind doors.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like it's one of those things where it's like there's no right answer to it. I feel like that really is a situation where like both of them are the bad guys. I think I think people are
in a perfect world.
Yeah.
You just go like, hey, let's just talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I think like you can get specific about like, like where either of them are at fault, but realistically, like both of them are the bad guys, and like trying to pick sides on that, it's like, it's just silly.
Yeah. The, obviously I deal with a lot of other sports and a lot of other athletes, and I'm obviously biased towards jiu-jitsu as a person that does jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know many athletes that if you want to just talk about Gordon Ryan and you take everything else, like any of the off the mat stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about Gordon Ryan, best dude in the sport, undefeated in X amount of years, hasn't been submitted in X amount of years, cannot find a match. Nobody wants to sign on the dotted line. How true that is I mean, I don't know. I don't know the flow inbox of whether or not people are turning down matches. But the reality is he's fought dudes that are way smaller than him in his last couple of matches because the other dudes don't want to fight him. So it's like, it's a crazy, just general sport. If you look at all other sport, there's no one in the UFC. I mean, fuck, maybe Ryan Hall actually. But it's like, there's nobody that the top dude in the sport cannot have somebody that is like, would be considered his challenger. They won't fight him. That's a very rare thing in sport.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that before actually. It's interesting in jiu-jitsu actually. It feels like it's a big world when you're a part of it, but when you take a step back, it's actually, especially when you get towards the top, there's really not a lot of people actually to compete against. Like you look at Australia, for example. Like who could Lachlan, for example, have a match against?
100%.
In Australia, there's no one.
Like Levi.
Yeah, exactly. And like even then, like that's not a matchup to make because Levi doesn't do no gi.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and then on the flip side of that, it's like who would there be for Levi to have a match against? Like they're two totally different sports, so it's like they can't really fight each other.
Yeah.
Because like, okay, Lachlan, if he jumps in the gi, it's like it's sorry, Lachlan. But like Levi's taking that one. But then if you go no gi, like Giles is taking that one, like no question.
Yeah.
Like I like Levi's like literally one of the best gi players in the world. Lachlan's one of the best no gi players in the world. Like it's and so between the two of them, there's no one for either of them to compete against. Like it's
bizarre, right?
And you realize that because like if you looked at other sports in Australia, there's people for anyone to go. I was trying to move straight past that.
Yeah. Nah, I just like giving him shit.
But yeah, like you look at other sports, there's like, masses of people you could potentially go against. But like jiu-jitsu, it's quite small. And then when you realize like that actually isn't just Australia, that extends to the rest of jiu-jitsu. Like it's hard to make matchups. Like even for Craig, for example, like Craig's very good, but he's not Gordon Ryan. But even then, there's not really anyone for Craig to go against either.
Yeah. It's crazy the disparity even at the top.
Oh yeah.
Like I look at when Ari was talking about Levi on the podcast and he's like, oh yeah, no, there's no chance. I have literally no chance. Yeah. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand what you mean because you're fucking good at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
He's like, yep, not even close. Not even the same ballpark. And I was like, I'm not sure. I get that. Rolled with Levi. Oh no, I get it.
Yeah.
But how the fuck does it happen? How does that dude who puts his entire life into jiu-jitsu be so much better than that dude who puts his entire life into jiu-jitsu? And then you got Craig, who's freak of all freaks.
Oh yeah.
And then you got Gordon. Craig can't fuck with Gordon. What?
Yeah.
Like what's the math?
If I knew, I would be doing it. I'd be doing it. I'm trying to work all that out. Like, yeah, it's one of those things where like you can ask, you could ask Craig, like him versus Gordon. It's not close. Like they've had.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah,
they train together every day.
Like I'd say, like Craig, second best like no gi competitor on the planet. Like pound for pound. Gordon number one to number two, not close. That's
so weird.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you almost see the same with the UFC with what was it, light heavyweight division? Like you got someone like John Jones.
Yeah.
Like I feel like him versus anyone else in his division, not close.
Yeah, but see with that, it makes more sense to me.
Why's that?
Because there's more weapons, there's aggression, there's so many factors that come into play. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, like in my head, essentially you could code jiu-jitsu. You could code reactions. You could code for this reaction has this, for this grip has this, for this. And then, you could run it like in the same way that you can run chess algorithms. You can have two computers that essentially there is like a finite set of rules.
Yeah.
Infinite variability, I'd say.
There is like, I think I've spent a lot of, like, I actually spent a fair bit of time like trying to work that out. Like even with chess algorithms. I want to hear
all about it because I'm lost.
But even with chess algorithms, like even with like, chess, like the finite sport that it is, like when you start trying to like build an algorithm around it, it's almost infinite possibilities. Like the way that it works for chess, and I apply this with a lot of my students in jiu-jitsu. Like we're talking about like concepts. Like a lot of times I borrowed this from like, you know, when they were building like chess algorithms, is this idea of working backwards through a sequence. So when you talk about like chess algorithms, like in chess, like you have like the end game. And so when they have like these chess AI, the way it works is they build up like a table of end game positions. And the idea is that like, you know, you're working towards one of those positions rather than being like, this is the pathway to those positions. Like, and you know that from the outset, like they're almost like working backwards, like trying to like knowing where they want to be, working backwards from there. And you can actually take that lesson across to jiu-jitsu where, you know, we're talking about like getting disproportionately skilled in certain areas. If you can find like a couple of areas, get really, really good at them, like it doesn't matter how you get there. Like, for example, like if you got into it, like if you put someone in an armbar, does it really matter how you got there? If you armbar them,
not to the ref.
All that matters is you put them in the armbar. So like that's why I think when it comes to jiu-jitsu and like this idea of like you know, submission grappling, like the most important aspect is the submission. So you should be able to like you know, take this lesson from like chess almost and
like work on the end game.
And I think that's actually why Gordon is so good, because he spent so much time under John Danaher like working on like, you know, all the late stage positions that like obviously he has at this stage like got it all mapped out exactly how he wants to get there, but he started with the end game. And works backwards from there because he knows where he wants to end up. Because you notice like Gordon Ryan doesn't actually submit everyone with every single submission possible. He's got a select few areas where he's very, very skilled. They happen to be the most common submissions in jiu-jitsu, but that's because like, you know, they're the most effective. Like, because you can't get good at every single submission. So he's gone like, you know, like you look at someone, John Danaher, he goes, okay, well, these are the most successful submissions in jiu-jitsu, so let's just spend all our time on getting good at them. Rather than trying to work out like these niche submissions that we could potentially trick someone with, if there's not evidence to support that, like, you know, you can see the like, you know, you can see the submission coming and like it doesn't work, like that's probably not something to spend your time on. Yeah. Because like eventually, like as you get to the top, everyone knows your game. But if you can get really, really good at like the most successful submissions in the sport, like then you can just work towards them. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, that's going off on like a massive tangent from where we were. But
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I feel like it all relates kind of.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. What do you think then, if we look at Gordon, like why is he essentially unbeatable in your mind? Because it is the same thing. Like he's doing the same jiu-jitsu, but he's not doing the same jiu-jitsu.
I think part of it is like Gordon himself, like when it comes to jiu-jitsu, is very intelligent. We can leave like the different discussions like off the table. Yeah. But I think even though he's very, very intelligent at jiu-jitsu and like he knows exactly what he wants to do, he can teach everything that like he does. I think what truly makes him good at jiu-jitsu is like absolute faith in John. Like he completely trusts whatever John shows him and he just commits to it. Like, and I think actually Craig talked about this recently, is because think of it like this. We've never seen John fail at a jiu-jitsu technique because he doesn't roll. Yeah, true. So like say for example, like I say like your coach in like the general sense, not specifically your coach, but it's like you've seen your coach fail before. Yeah. And like you've probably even seen him fail at his best techniques. Actually, I literally, this is going to sound fucked up, I've literally never seen my coach in trouble one time. Really? Okay, well, never mind. But he has been submitted by Lockie. Not submitted. I think he lost to Lockie, I'm pretty sure. But, and I've seen him... Oh, no, I've seen him lose on live stream at World Masters, I think. But yeah, like, yeah, I know exactly. But that's what I mean. Like in the gym, literally never. It's fucking out of control. Exactly that. So, like, there's this perception that your coach is human, but, like, you know, John Danaher, he's never failed in competition, so therefore he's almost like a god. This is like the perception at least. So, like, it instills a lot of trust. As Gordon, you can build that up in your head, and that can be, like, the pillar that you lean on. And, like, you see that with the way he talks about John as well. Like he gives John all the credit in the world, and like it sounds like it's probably like, you know, like he's due the credit as well. But I think like just that absolute faith in what John's showing him really goes a long way towards him just committing to every single technique that John goes for. Because like if like say for example you come up with a technique yourself, and even though you know it works, like there's still like this degree of like, oh well, I've stuffed this up before, like maybe it's not perfect. But like if John's telling you that it is the perfect technique and like you just need to apply it better, like that does something psychologically, I think. Yeah, definitely. I think too, so after when I rolled with Levi, I literally did 0% jiu-jitsu, and that's not an exaggeration. Like I'd believe it.
I feel like if we went and rolled, and this is not in any way disrespectful, I could get a grip.
Oh, yeah.
I could at least get a grip. And
Yeah.
you'd break that grip, and then you'd pass me, and then you'd submit me.
Oh, me to Levi, no comparison. Like, that's not
It
offensive.
it was fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
And I was just so bewildered, man. I was just like, and I'm not in any way, I don't think I'm good. Like, I know exactly where I stand in the totem pole of jiu-jitsu. So this is not coming from a person that's good. This is coming from a person that trains every day and at least gets to do jiu-jitsu in every role that I do. For 1% of the time, for 20%, sliding scale.
Yeah.
Levi, 0. And I was just like, what the fuck is happening, man? I couldn't move. I couldn't get grips.
Yeah.
I couldn't get keep any. There was literally nothing that I could do. And it was honestly like a mind-blowing experience of and I took away, I was like, here is a dude that is living in the matrix of physically in the game that we've agreed to play, he's got the source code. He's got access to the source code. And I'm fucking super late to the game. And it was just they're so smooth of just deflecting everything. The pressure was crazy. I couldn't move my hips with him holding my shins. Couldn't move and I was like, all right, so I know he's controlling my shins. Why can't anything else move?
And by the time you finish that thought, he's inside
It's
control.
over, yeah. And I was just like, holy fuck. So imagine then in my head, I'm like, there must just be some weird thing that these guys that are that pinnacle, tip of the spear kind of thing, they've just got some sort of feeling going on where they know the rules so well. There's some access to just not even more information on a conceptual level. It's just so detailed to where it's I grab here, you're shut down.
Yeah.
And you watch even it was Gordon's match against Gianni.
Yeah.
Did he fight Gianni before Wagner? Was Gianni his last fight before Wagner?
No.
Who was
it? Roberto.
Roberto. Yeah. Sorry, that's when Roberto ended up coming up, and then Gordon's playing guard. Roberto couldn't pass him, and Gordon didn't even use his legs.
Oh yeah.
He just literally framed while sitting down, couldn't get past. Roberto Jimenez is an amazing guard passer. Yeah. So that's what I mean. There's just something fucking weird going on.
Yeah.
At that top level where it's so to talk about John, it's the techniques. I don't want to disagree with you, but I just feel it extends. So there's something else.
Oh, there's certainly something else.
And obviously it must stem from just the original coaching. Yeah. But there's his way of processing that information that he's been given. So A, he's getting given the correct information, and then B, what he is able to internalize and then do with that information is something that maybe it's something I'll never be able to do, even if I spent the exact same amount of time. It's the baseline is just not, there's a ceiling there, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting what aspects go into that, because you're exactly right. Like I was talking about Gordon and John.
Yeah.
But John's got a lot of students, and they're not all Gordon Ryan. So clearly there's an aspect of it that is Gordon Ryan. I wonder how much of it is also like neuroplasticity. Gordon is actually, I think, the youngest on the team as well. Like with everything else going on, Gordon actually is younger than me. I think the only one younger than him is Nicky Ryan and Nicky Rod.
Yeah.
But outside of that, because I think Gordon's 24. Yeah, something. Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So I wonder how much of it is something like that, for example, where he also he just takes in the information so much faster, but also something else to it as well.
Yeah, but it's just there isn't
that it factor.
Yeah, and there isn't another one of him in sports that is the best dude, can't get matches. The second best dude's essentially dog shit compared to him. It's
exactly.
Just what world are we living in where of 7 billion people, there's one dude that can just play this one game that much better.
It makes me wonder, compared to other sports as well, how much of it is because of not having enough depth in jiu-jitsu to fill that out. If say for example jiu-jitsu opened up to everyone and we had as many people
in school.
And everyone was doing it the same way basketball in America is popular, where you're getting all the super athletes. because like we talked about John Jones before. Like John Jones was the runt of the litter out of like what was it? He's got
three brothers.
Yeah, he's got three brothers, and he was the runt of the litter. They're all in the NFL. He's like, oh well, I can't do it. Like I didn't make it in the NFL. I'll go do MMA, and he's like literally the greatest MMA fighter of all time. And like he's the runt of the litter.
Yeah.
Like so it makes me wonder how much of it is like depth in the sport. Like if we open up jiu-jitsu to everyone, because we're seeing that now with even someone like Nicky Rod, for example. Like how like he's been training I think 3 years now, and like he's a super athlete. Like he's someone that's in jiu-jitsu that's a genuine athlete. I think we don't have many real athletes in jiu-jitsu that are getting to a successful level, but he's someone that's is a real athlete and is getting to that level.
Yeah, because there's athletes and then there's NFL standard athletes.
Exactly.
And there's a really, really, really big difference.
Exactly. Like I'm doing jiu-jitsu. I'm doing something that is athletic. I don't consider myself an athlete. Just compared to anyone that's like what I'll call a real athlete in other sports, like even if you look at wrestling, for example, like someone actually I can't even pick like a single person because I feel like the days of wrestling where you had like non-athletic people in wrestling are long gone.
Ben Askren.
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
the last one.
It might be him, and then before that it's like Dave Schultz, but like they're like disappearing. I feel like to be competitive in wrestling, you have to be a real athlete.
Yeah.
So like I think maybe jiu-jitsu will get to that point if it opens up enough.
I think that's one of the most special things about jiu-jitsu though, because
Absolutely.
I'm not a good athlete.
Yeah.
Like me personally, I've done sport my entire life. I'm not very good at sport,
Yeah.
but I'm objectively better than myself at other sports at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of one of the cool things about it.
For sure.
And you kind of can get a superpower.
Yeah.
Essentially, 10 years of doing jiu-jitsu, you have a superpower over a person that hasn't been doing that.
Yeah, and like to your point as well, like we're talking about Gordon Ryan. I'd actually even say Gordon Ryan I don't think is very athletic.
No, I wouldn't say so either.
Like compared to someone like Nicky Rod, who I think is a real athlete, you look at like the guys that appear in wrestling or any other sports, Gordon Ryan isn't very athletic. So like that is something that's beautiful about jiu-jitsu, I think, is you can really go deep down on just skill sets.
Yeah.
Purely just skill sets rather than
it's like a data-driven game.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, especially to be a sport. Like you would not say data in sport is for coaches.
Yeah.
And then the players just go out and apply they get given, I guess, like a reduced version of the data that has been analyzed. And it's like, okay, how do we communicate this in the simplest message to the athlete? But in jiu-jitsu, it's like the athlete needs the most data. Yeah. And it's like, let's figure out a way to transfer. I guess in some cases, you're trying to keep it as simple as possible. Yeah. But the people that benefit are the ones that just know so much more.
I think that's where the sport is at now. I think that's changing over time, though. I think part of it is because compared to say something like wrestling, which is like we're talking about like the grappling arts, let's say, like jiu-jitsu is probably the most all-encompassing of all the grappling arts. So there's so much more to learn. And I think we're not at that stage where we know enough about jiu-jitsu where we can truly simplify it in a way like where we have like more of that sort of like coach-athlete relationship. I think we're getting to that point though. Because we're seeing that with like again, like going back to like John Danaher, we're seeing that more with his team where you're seeing like a team of athletes or like a team of competitors and then an athlete, Nicky Rod. Yeah. Where like they're all doing what John teaches them. And then like I think John is probably like the first coach we've really got in jiu-jitsu that's got like a true grasp of the sport and is able to simplify it, like you said, like give those true coaching cues rather than giving the students all the data. Yeah. And I think maybe the sport's going in that direction overall now. Like maybe that type of information will start to like, spread through the rest of jiu-jitsu and we'll get to that point where it becomes more of an actual team sport. Yeah. So I think maybe we're more at like that turning point in the sport where we're getting to a stage where maybe we'll see what you're talking about there.
Yeah. I wonder what has to happen though. Yeah. From a sports perspective to keep the wheel turning, because it's like insanely bottlenecked at the top. Yeah. I guess luckily there's a trillion other fights that you can put on with so many other people. But in terms of like the top dude, if Gordon keeps competing in jiu-jitsu, then it's like, well, who beats that dude for X amount of time? Like that, anybody that could even come close to beating Gordon, like now, like you're not, you know what I mean? You'd see that person coming from years away. There's like a very clear progression of these. There's no one hiding that there's no Francis Ngannou in a
Yeah.
sand mine
Exactly.
in Africa that is like secretly training jiu-jitsu that's gonna fuck up Gordon Ryan. Like
Exactly.
there's nobody on the horizon.
Like, and it's one of those things where I try and keep, my finger on the pulse with like what's going on in like the sport and like who's coming up. I feel like there are people coming up, but they're not in a position to be able to like reach their full potential to challenge Gordon Ryan. Because as I mentioned, like it's hard, I think, to be an athlete.
What would you like elaborate on that? Like what would
Sure.
be stopping those people?
Sure. So I think, because as I mentioned, like we're talking about like the way the sport's evolving and like how we're looking at like the Renzo Gracie team, and like that's the first example of like a real team in the sport.
Yeah.
The only way so you'd need to have like an equivalent somewhere else, and for that athlete to go towards that other team, like where like that team has the potential to actually grow properly in the right direction, like to have like their own essential John Danaher or like a true dedicated coach like that. And I don't think that really exists anywhere else yet.
Yeah.
So I think like
I think Lockie will probably be that dude once he stops competing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think like the big factor there is having a coach that has stepped away from competing and is really focused on that, rather than a coach that has stepped away from competing and like is kind of trying to step away from jiu-jitsu without actually stepping away from jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I think to get that sort of coach, you need someone that's really like, that is what they want to do versus like that's what they're sort of like shoehorned into doing.
Yeah, it's a crazy dynamic because you need the talent. You can't just have the coach. You need the talent to be coached, and then the talent needs the coach.
Exactly.
So there is a crazy dynamic there.
Yeah.
You'd think that if Craig never went to New York and just stayed with Lockie didn't murder it at ADCC, retires, and then it's like, righto, everything's on Craig. Craig's going to be the guy.
It's possible. It's possible. I don't think
Craig's fighting kids and shit. Like he's like, we've lost him. He's off the rails.
Yeah, like, you know what? He's fighting kids, but it's like I fought Cade Ratour like a year and how long ago, and I lost to him. So it's like, man, like,
how did you lose that one? Did you get dast?
Yeah, I got dast. So I escaped the first dast. I've spent a lot of time on my dast escape since then. Like that's that example of the ego that we talked about.
Yeah.
I haven't actually talked about this before. I guess we'll talk about it now because I'm not really big on giving excuses, but I think it's been long enough since then that that I can like sort of like talk about it. I didn't train for 2 weeks leading up to that match. I really seriously injured my shoulder about 2 weeks out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so that match I had zero preparation for. And like, yeah, so that's a match where it's like I lost. I'm not mad. I'm just frustrated. Like
you wish you could run that one back. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like I didn't want to make a post at the time because it's like he could have hurt his shoulder 2 weeks out from that match too, and I just don't know about it because he's won, and so he's kept it inside. Like
yeah.
Like, and so I feel comfortable talking about it now because it's been so long since then, because like he's won the match and he's clearly gone on to be like a great competitor.
Yeah.
Like I mean, he already was a great competitor, but like he's still rising.
Yeah.
So that's a match where it's like I'd like to have the rematch, but I need to earn it first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I injured my shoulder about 2 weeks out, and then I taught one class, and then I got staph in my armpit a week out. So I had an injured shoulder, and by the time the match came, I was finishing my course of antibiotics. I didn't have staph anymore. Otherwise, like if I like still actually had like a serious infection, I would have pulled out.
Yeah.
But like I was still like taking antibiotics, which takes a fair bit of a toll on you. Yeah. So that's a match like I'd really like to work towards getting back. Like, and I mean,
it was a sick match at the start.
It's probably
right?
one of the more exciting matches I've had. Like,
I'm trying to fully remember it. I wonder if we should fucking. Yeah, it's probably too hard to log in. Type in Flow Grappling into the browser there, Rones. I'd love to just give it a little. Should just come up. Yeah, it's go log in.
Already logged in.
Oh no, we're logged in. Sweet. Go search Jeremy Skinner. Sorry to rewatch it, dude. This is the second day in a row we've rewatched someone's loss.
No, that's okay. I've watched it many times.
Go down.
Because like,
where is it?
Should be a little bit further down because I did No Gi Worlds right after that.
Oh, okay.
I think I did Polaris and the No Gi Worlds like straight away. There we go.
The top one. That top one.
The only problem I have with the match is that thumbnail that I had for the video. They have that posted everywhere, like every single week for like 6 months after that. Like every time I wanted to open something jiu-jitsu related, I just looked at that photo of him diving on a DAS.
That's so fucking funny.
Oh, it's just like that was what made me frustrated me the most.
Fast forward through a little bit.
Yeah, like during the match, like I think like Cade had like
Yeah, I remember it being a good match.
Yeah, he had like a dance attempt earlier than that. I think actually he even put me in like an inverted triangle. I had like a flying triangle attempt.
Oh, yeah, go back a bit, right?
Yeah, like I think shortly after that I had a flying triangle attempt. Earlier in the match, I put him in saddle, like right off the bat. Like this is where it was. I think I can't remember exactly how that was. I think I'd switched to an outside heel hook here, switched back to saddle again.
Yeah, that's pretty deep too, eh?
Yeah.
Why is this internet being
And then
so shit?
I think he clears his leg here and he does like a nice weird back step with his left leg, I think it was.
Yeah, this was an exciting match, dude.
It was a good match. Like I'm not bitter about rewatching this. Like
yeah, well, I mean, the thing is too, like,
look at that. That was nice. Like I really did not see it coming. I rewatched this and I actually don't even quite know how he set that up. Like I think that was just pure
go back
intuition.
a tiny bit.
I think that was just pure intuition, that one. Like, but that's a nice triangle setup. Like, I'm a big fan of that. Like the side triangle Kimura.
Yeah.
Like you'll see Craig's really good with that as well. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at this match and I'm thinking like, okay, well, I lost this match, but I'm like, this is what he could have done to make his side triangle better.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too with jiu-jitsu. Like, I mean, we just finished talking about how fucking no one can beat Gordon. But in general, like, most matches, you get two. I'm pretty sure you guys were both brown belts at this time, or Cade was.
I was a brown belt. I think he was either purple belt or a blue belt. I know he got.
No, he was a purple belt.
He was a purple belt.
Yeah,
I know he got promoted very, very quickly. Like
Yeah.
from like blue belt to purple belt to brown belt quite quickly.
Yeah. Fast forward a bit, right? That's super hard to finish that kind of triangle.
Yeah, like it's quite a difficult one. You've really got to play off the Kimura to make that work.
Yeah.
And this is where he went
So
for the
this is
Das
where he's
from
going
here.
for the first Das, eh?
I think he gets it right after that.
Yeah. I remember you just being the whitest dude alive.
Oh, yeah.
Straight from a Melbourne winter.
Yeah. Hey, jiu-jitsu is not exactly great for tanning.
Yeah. No, hey, I feel ya.
If you're spending 12 hours a day indoors, you're not going to pick up a tan.
No.
And then we're in the
100%.
UK here, so even though I wasn't training, I really did not have much time to do any tanning.
Yeah,
Like
it makes sense.
I think every time I've been to the UK, it has been overcast over like the entire country.
Yeah. No, that I don't know why they gave us Australia. They should have all moved over here.
They should have left us
the
there.
shit people there.
And I think this is where he dies for it.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Like, This one here, I've spent a lot more time on my Das defense. Like there, I'm taking my elbow low, but instead what I do now is I actually punch it towards his opposite hip.
Yeah.
Like, so instead I'm trying to like bring my arm to my left, but really I should be like punching it forward and then trying to flatten out from there.
Yeah, okay.
But
yeah, I definitely don't have a Das escape in my arsenal.
I think that's something that gets neglected in jiu-jitsu quite a fair bit, is like dedicated submission escapes,
Yeah.
rather than just like hoping I'll get out and I'm going to hold on until like maybe they let go.
Yeah.
I think that's like not a recipe for success. Like that's a recipe for, hoping you're against someone worse than yourself.
Dude, this was gnarly.
Oh yeah, my neck was so sore after this match.
Dude, I bet.
Yeah.
He's like really chasing that thing.
Oh yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I had fun with this one. Like, yeah, that was one of those ones where I think I rewatched it a few times, like quite bitter. And then after that, I can rewatch it and like be a bit more
like proud of the effort.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was actually happy with how I did, considering how I was feeling. You can see like we're not even that like long into the match and my cardio's all gone.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's like a combination of like the antibiotics and just like having not trained at all.
Well, I mean,
you can see this is where his setup's amazing. He inverts his grip on the Toriando there, forcing you to post that hand high, and that's where he starts shooting for the Das from there. It's a really, really nice setup.
Yeah.
I've stolen that one.
Yeah, it's crazy when you watch back a loss, man.
Yeah.
And you can like deconstruct it, and like it's literally right there. Like you can see the sequence of mistakes that led to a submission. It's super valuable.
I think this is when I shoot a flying triangle, and I think I've never gone for this in my entire life.
Fuck,
ever.
That's amazing.
I think, was it here? Yeah, that's it. Front headlock, and then I think he took an underhook, overhook.
Yeah.
And then from here, they move us to the center, and I think this is when I jump for it.
You could see you were just about to pull the trigger on it too before they put you back to the center. Dude, this was a crazy match. This isn't an L to be bummed on.
Oh yeah, see, he's talking to the ref. Then he was saying to the ref, he goes, he's talking right now. He goes, "Can I slam him?" And I just whispered in his ear, I was like, "Bro, you can't slam me."
Do not slam me.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
And I was trying to work a guillotine from there, but like I just couldn't break him down from that position. I think like my legs were just gassing out too much. In hindsight, there's a lot more I could have done with that position. I think eventually I gave up and I tried to look for K-guard on one of his legs.
Who'd you have in your corner?
I actually had Lachlan, Craig, and Liv.
That's right.
Like
Everyone
I had the whole crowd in my corner.
You had the A team, bro.
Yeah. I think actually on that day we had I think Craig's brother Adam competed as well.
Oh yeah.
You should have him on the podcast. He's got so many amazing stories. He's a crack up.
Dude, I wish I got to do the Thailand camp with him.
Oh man.
Because he was there for both of Craig's ones, and everyone was just like, yeah, he's a G.
He's a legend. He was in my corner as well for this. He competed on the event earlier. I think also James Walters. I don't know if you know James. Yeah, so James is an absolute weapon of a brown belt as well. Like, I think he's up in Newcastle now though.
Yeah, right.
He's really, really good, and he spent a lot of time traveling around with Craig, like around the US. Spent a lot of time at Henzo's, just because I think his partner, she was like studying medicine over in the US, something like that. Yeah. So we had like the full crew here at this event. Like it was a good time.
That's that is a bummer though that you were sick leading up to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, still it's a sick match. Like I remember watching. I watched this whole card actually.
Yeah.
And I remember being stoked on how you did.
Yeah. I'd like to have another shot again, but like it's one of those things where I felt terrible at the time, but in hindsight, I'm like that might be like the most exciting match I've had. So maybe I should just stop training before matches.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, you're up in what 48 hours?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, maybe Kanan. I'll just stop. I'll tell him I've stopped training now.
Yeah, dude, how crazy! You want to talk about jiu-jitsu? What would you call it? Like a freak party project, like mad scientist, two twins training with one of the goats, like if you could engineer that shit in a lab, like, dude, identical drilling partner.
I feel like the Meow Brothers were like the ultimate experiment on that.
Yeah, they were the first ones.
And it's interesting, we were talking before about like, like that it factor with competitors. Like there's actually, even though I'd say like Paolo and Jiao like have had like almost the same upbringing in jiu-jitsu, it's interesting, like there's actually a pretty big disparity in terms of their like achievements in jiu-jitsu. Like Paolo, like I think he's a bronze medalist at ADCC. Actually, might even be a silver medalist. But like Zhao's like competed at ADCC I think once in 2013. I think now he's finally won a world championships, but for the longest time Paolo was the one that won the world championship. It's interesting, like they're so close, like they're so close in terms of their upbringing in jiu-jitsu, like the skill sets they work on.
Yeah.
But like in terms of their achievements, like it's not identical.
Yeah. That is interesting, eh?
Yeah, like so again, like it's a question of like where does that it factor come from? Like is it actually like is that last like 1%? Is it actually truly just random? Like in terms of circumstance, like who you get matched up against in your division? And
I reckon over time, like if we're talking specifically the Meow Brothers.
Yep.
It's just all a mental thing.
It could be, because I think Paolo actually got promoted to brown belt before Zhao. Like, so it could even be like it stemmed like I'm not going to sit here and play like psych with them, but like it could even like exactly that, like stem from that, like seeds sort of planted early, where it's sort of like long term sort of affects you mentally.
Yeah, and I think that there's just like so me and my brother, this is a real good example, because me and my brother were very similar in motocross, right? So we were born and raised, same house, blah, 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 rode the same bikes, everything. Yep. He's so much better than me. Like, ridiculous.
What would you chalk that up to?
Just him.
Just him?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just all in... I think that motocross is weird. And this is me getting into the meta of that in a similar way with jiu-jitsu. But I think there's I wish it was testable, and I'm sure maybe it is, maybe one day it will be, but I think speed is subjective.
Yep.
Going fast. Like if we're sitting in a car together on the Bruce Highway, and we're in the same vehicle looking out the same window doing 100 kilometers an hour, it would feel different to me than it would to you. And I think that there's a moment like let's say if you've got a 90-degree left-hand turn in a car, and then there's a wall, and then there's the turn, right? You're driving down the highway, and I'm like, go as fast as you can and make that turn.
It makes sense.
There's going to be a point where you hit the brakes and go, fuck. Like, everyone will have that reaction. Michael Schumacher, it's probably 20, 30 meters down the road.
Yeah. It makes sense. Like exactly that. Like, you know, like generally like at a solid speed, like you don't experience like the change, like you experience changes in speed, like you experience acceleration, deceleration at like a cruising like sort of speed, like you don't notice anything. But it might be like exactly that, like on like a turn, for example, like you're both hitting it at the same speed, but like because like a corner is like the nature of a corner is like acceleration and deceleration.
Yeah.
Like exactly that, like how you deal with like that feeling, like might be exactly what it is. Like the same way, like some people, like you'll have like, you know, say for example, like two brothers, like one of them can do roller coasters, the other can't.
Yeah.
Like it could be exactly that, because I feel like that's probably the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like
I think there's just this thing that there is like whatever your and I think, you know how I was saying you talk about self-referencing and it's like the ego. I think that there is this like process of your experience.
Yeah.
So like
for sure.
There's like you're conscious, you're having this experience. The self that you are is in the middle of that experience.
Yeah.
And it is interpreting the information that is like filling out the void of experience. And I think that if you're about to make that turn, right? And there's the wall there and it's like, make this turn as fast as possible. There's like a process going on that's like predicting what you need to do to hit the brakes, turn left, hit the accelerator. Like there's a process going on there. And then there's a prediction that your brain is making of what you need to do to make that turn and live. And I think that some people are more efficient in making those predictions so that the fear that you feel that there's like, fuck, need to hit the brakes. That's a response. That's you responding to that process that you've calculated. But if you put like a machine, like a robot, AI robot, self-driving car or whatever, and you just programmed it to go the same, then it's not going to feel any of that. It's just going to do the calculations. It's going to extract the exact right amount of data based on physics, not on an emotional or like the self-interpretation. And it's just going to go like bing, 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 grrr, done.
Yeah, and I imagine like part of that is like exactly that, like you're talking about like the slight differences. I wonder if it's like, you know, like we talk about like, you know, say being an athlete, like diet, things like that, like all those little things across the course of your life, like sort of like add up to that moment where like it's maybe slightly affected the way you've absorbed information at certain periods of your life and things like that. Like where
so
like it's
crazy,
it's all those small things, and maybe that's where like that it factor comes from, where it's like it's not random, but it's unpredictable. Like you know, those two being like two separate
or there's
things.
just so many factors that it couldn't be.
That's exactly what I mean. Like it's not random. It's like it's not predictable. Like there's so many factors that like
it's just not a calculation that you can make.
Exactly. Like, and because that's the nature of everything. Like there's nothing that's truly random. Like I think when you want to like, you know, say for example, like you Google like random number generation, they take in things like certain waves coming in from the atmosphere that are getting measured, and like that's the closest thing we've got to randomness, and so they base off like those sort of like random number generators off that. Nothing's truly random, so it's more about the fact that it's not random, it's just unpredictable. Like we don't have enough information about like what's coming in to be able to like make an accurate prediction about it. So like maybe like that's all it chalks up to, and you know, it's down to like, you know, two athletes that have like, we've got everything the same, but then it is those like radiation.
Well, nothing's the same. Like you got, let's say Ty and Cade Rotolo.
Yeah.
It's like on the macro scale, everything's the same.
Yep.
But on the micro scale, nothing's the same.
Like
you know
one
what
might
I mean?
have had a cheeseburger for lunch and the other one had a hot dog. Like,
or even like a shitty conversation.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
That Cade was out of the room for.
Yeah.
And then Ty's in the room, and then something happens that gets internalized at a young age. That's something that, you know, like a childhood trauma or whatever, could just be like these tiny little details.
You can even probably, this is like getting full into like butterfly effect sort of stuff.
Yeah, dude, that's legit.
Yeah, like it could even be like a bad conversation before a training session, and that's like the one session where like that guy, like, you know, say for example, Cade picked up like how to like defend against a certain submission, like that one little detail, and the other one didn't because he's like too busy thinking about like something terrible that's happened in his life, or just like a crap conversation he's had, so he's not really focused on training, and he's just thinking like, oh, I just want to get to rolling so I can beat someone up.
Yeah,
Could be
yeah.
like I imagine like that sort of stuff snowballs
Yeah.
to the level of unpredictableness.
But man, what a way to grow up if you're into
yeah.
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like how crazy. I would love to know. Like, can you imagine if their parents kept it like a hour meter? Just like bing, start, and it's just like how many hours they've rolled together.
I think you're starting to stray into almost like those Nazi level experiments that went on.
I love
like,
that
where
shit. Yeah.
Like that, it's one of those things where it's like the most awful thing on the planet, like
Yeah,
that they've
yeah.
done, but like they ran experiments on like, you know, like the twins, like
Yeah.
pairs of twins, and like the relationship they had when kept apart, and like, you know, like when they
Yeah.
kept together. Like, that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, but that's like the only way that you'd be able to fucking figure this shit out, eh?
Yeah, maybe that's why maybe that's why there's still going to be randomness in the world, because like we probably shouldn't do those things.
That's actually a great point. Like, there's just so much data that you could not correlate at
Yeah.
all. So like, what's the fucking point?
Exactly. So maybe we should just say art's magic.
It's just insane.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu, getting good at jiu-jitsu, it's magic. You
Yeah.
can do 95% of it. The last 5% is magic and randomness.
Yeah, but it's just a something that there is it. But you see that in everything. Like,
Oh, for sure.
You look at Kelly Slater. There's waves that Kelly Slater's got as a 40-year-old, where you're just like, bruh, what do you have connected to the surfboard?
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's just these people that can just do this insane shit. But I wonder people that, like surfing, big wave surfing, how the fuck do you paddle into a wave like that? What's the process that you have to go through over X amount of time to think that is something that you can physically do?
Because I feel like, I mean, I imagine to a degree you can build up to it, but you can't build up to where it's like, oh, you know, that's like a, I don't know surfing terminology, but let's say like a 2 million foot wave, let's say. Like you can't build, like say for example, you got a massive wave coming along. You can't be like, nah, I'm going to pick the slightly smaller massive wave that comes along and build up to like this really big one. It's like small wave, massive waves. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like that's how I imagine the process works. Like I don't know how you'd build up to it and just get like have the conviction to commit to something like that.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like just the mental, the place that the human brain can go to tell you can do a certain thing is so insane. Like there's a pretty unbelievable capacity there.
Yeah. It's just, I feel like there's like, certain things like that where like there's no build up, you just do it, and like it basically is sink or swim. Like,
yeah, in that circumstance.
You mentioned Kelly Slater. How do you feel about like, you know, like what's happening now with jiu-jitsu? Like, you know, basically like celebrities starting to make jiu-jitsu more popular. Like you're seeing like guys like Joe Rogan that are bringing, you know, like you know, jiu-jitsu to the masses, and like guys like Kelly Slater, for example, doing exactly that. Like,
yeah, well, I personally think it's awesome.
Yeah.
What I don't like is when you see footage of like Ashton Kutcher rolling.
Yeah, with Craig, yeah.
And then you're just like, nah, well, he's not a brown belt.
He's not really a brown belt.
Yeah. And anyone can see that.
Yeah.
And then, so I think in that specific circumstance, but
Yeah.
so I know Edwin, like Najmi, we've talked back and forth. I'm going to get him on the podcast.
Sweet.
And he's like full homies with Spencer Pratt.
Yep.
And
Awesome.
who was on the hills.
Yeah.
Full reality, sells crystals on his Instagram. And so I was talking to Edwin and I was like, is Spencer like a legit brown belt? And he said, hands down, legit as fuck.
Yeah.
So that, I think that the more people that see jiu-jitsu for what it is, and like Kelly is an advocate of it. Dude, little known full on jiu-jitsu savage celebrity is Jack Freestone.
Oh,
He's
really?
He's on the world tour. He's married to Alana Blanchard.
Where's he training?
In the Boar's Nest, I believe, in
Like,
Hawaii.
yeah.
Oh, Hawaii. Yeah,
I think there's a couple of cool guys that go and train out there. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it's huge in surfing. But Jack's a legit purple belt. Like, really, really good. Like, trains. I think he had his blue belt for 5 years because he was just on and off with. So he'd go in season, off season.
That's where I feel like the problems arise. Like I mean, we can get into a whole discussion about whether or not, like, you know, belts are bullshit or not, but like approximately people spend like about 2 years on each belt. And I think like what happens with the celebrities a lot of the time is, you know, they can't dedicate that much time to getting a blue belt in 2 years, but then they're still getting it in 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, because that's why I wonder about, like, I think Demi Lovato was on like Joe Rogan recently. Yeah. I haven't listened to that.
Yeah, I hadn't listened to that either.
Yeah, but like I wonder, like, because I think she's been a blue belt for quite a while now. I wonder how much time she's actually putting into training, or if like she's getting like, you know, the bullshit shit sort of treatment. Same with like I think it's really cool to see someone like Jonah Hill training.
Yeah.
But then it's like, again, like I have the same question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be legit. But then, so with Kelly, so I know Kelly, we've tried to organise some training sessions, just kind of hasn't really lined up. Like last time he was on the Gold Coast.
I've heard he's like legit.
Yeah, he's
like
good.
Real legit. Yeah.
But the problem is, so I get it with Kelly.
Yeah.
He can't just go, like, I would have to set up a class for him.
Yeah.
Or not a class, a session. I'd be like, hey, it's going to be like me, Skinner, Shane. You know, like I'd pick my crew. We're the same weight. We're the same
and you'd have to
size.
Have a chat, like no recording the session, like no posting stuff. Like maybe there can be a group photo at the end, but like, like no, just like.
So to be a celebrity doing jiu-jitsu, like Jonah Hill, can you imagine Jonah Hill just going to like a normal class and having like some angry fucking purple belt just rip his face off?
Oh yeah, exactly. Because you know that like guys are going to do that. Because they're going to be like, oh, well.
Dudes just do that to everybody. Dudes do that to chicks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You know what
I mean? Like talking to like Jess Fraser, like, you know, like she's like, like, you know, like a really, really high level, like black belt. But she says like she'll have like a seminar and some dude will like rock up and like roll with her just to be like, see, you know, female black belt ain't shit. Like, and just like try and like, you know, stomp, like just basically absolutely try and wreck up.
So fucking lame.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, like that's why it's really impressive to me see someone like Tom Hardy, for example. I think he's just gotten his blue belt recently, but like he's been training for years. Like he's doing it like the legit way. I think, like to my understanding, like he's turning up. He's just getting beat up.
Wait, Google like celebrities that do jiu-jitsu. Let's see if we're missing anyone crazy.
Henry Cavill.
Is he an actor?
Oh yeah. So he played Superman in the Man of Steel movie. I think he was in. What was he in? He's in one of the Mission Impossible.
Keanu Reeves as well.
Keanu. I've heard he's legit.
JujitsuMartialArts.com. Never been on this website. 56 famous celebs who do jiu-jitsu. We're onto something here.
If you got hyphens in your title, you're not a legit website. Sorry if you...
Facts. Oh, actually, we're Gypsy hyphen tails.
Oh, well, sorry.
Skinner. I need to rethink everything. All right, so we got Joe Rogan, Ed O'Neill, Al Bundy.
That's right. Yeah, that's
belt. Right. Demi Lovato, Guy Ritchie,
yeah.
Super legit.
So him, Henry Cavill train at Hodges in London.
Yeah, in London.
Like that's a legit school to train at.
Ashton Kutcher is a fake brown belt. Unfortunate, but it is what it is. Tom Hardy, the English actor.
Yeah.
He's often seen training with
Keanu
Reeves.
Yeah. Margot Robbie. That's an interesting one.
Oh, dude, Maynard Keenan from Tool is a legit
purple
really?
belt.
I'm pretty sure he's a coach too. Like he coaches at an academy. Dude, this list is dope. Margot Robbie.
What does it say? She spent 3 weeks. That doesn't count.
So she's done an intro. Nicolas Cage, long time student under the legendary fighter Hoist Gracie.
I haven't heard that before.
Dude,
come on. He made that Jiu Jitsu movie. He can't be on that list.
Jim Carrey is a brown belt under Hoist Gracie.
That's pretty legit. Like
that's fucking gnarly. Jim Carrey, a brown belt?
If you see like the setup, like they've got like over at like the Valente Brothers school and stuff, like where they're doing all these gradings, like that's pretty hardcore what they do.
Yeah,
because they got a lot of like local cops and stuff that are like they're running the training sessions. Like to get like a brown belt over there, you gotta be tough.
Yeah, dude. Respect. Jason Statham, been training with Guy Ritchie. That makes sense. So he'd be legit if Jason Statham was doing jiu-jitsu with Guy Ritchie.
I'd say so because I think Guy Ritchie's been a black belt for quite a long time. Like he was training like way back, I believe.
Yeah,
like,
I listened to the first podcast he did with Rogan, and they talked about he'd been doing jiu-jitsu for like 20 something years.
Yeah,
and it was always
like,
under. Was it Hoist? Hodger.
Yeah. Like. If you're training like jiu-jitsu way back when it wasn't cool, you're probably legit.
Yeah, dude, I wish I was a part of that movement. I mean, at some point, like looking back in 10 years, I'll be like, oh, dude, I did jiu-jitsu when nobody did it. But to be a part of that OG crew would have been pretty sick.
You wonder about all the guys that like started back then and they kind of went, nah, this is lame. Let's do boxing or something. Like boxing's cool, but like boxing's had had its like its growth.
Yeah.
While like you could have been a part of something that was like booming.
Yeah. Dude, this is crazy. I did a jiu-jitsu lesson in 2014.
Oh, really?
Yeah. and I loved it. I was living in America. It was just around the corner from my house, made on the gym, the whole thing. Insane. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm in. I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
And then I was just chilling, sitting with my arms back on the mat after the last roll. This big dude gets up. He was like 300 pounds. Gets up, slips while he was getting up, and his shoulder lands on my wrist, breaks my wrist. First time I ever did jiu-jitsu, I broke my scaphoid, which took like 6 months to heal. I had no health insurance. I never went back to jiu-jitsu until 4 years ago.
Mate, what are you made of where you're getting all of these injuries?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was just a shit one, that one.
That's like, I don't think I've broken any, like I've had some pretty serious injuries in jiu-jitsu. Like I've had like surgery in both my knees, but I haven't like physically broken anything. I
feel like it'd be pretty rare. I've broken my rib or like cracked a rib.
Yeah.
And that was completely my fault. But yeah, I've been pretty lucky jiu-jitsu injury wise.
Yeah. I actually, while we're on that, like it's interesting, like, you know, we often talk about like, you know, breaking an arm and things like that with like submissions and things. I think people really overestimate how hard it is to break something like in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Like I often like teaching heel hooks, for example, and like you know, I'm teaching and the person's like terrified because they think their knee's going to like explode and they're going to lose all 4 ligaments. I'm like, dude, I try and do that to people and like that's tough. Like when I'm trying, that's tough. Like I'm not going to do it by accident right here. Like don't worry, you're okay.
The heel hooks thing's interesting because so I'm in a gym that does not do any heel hooks ever. Yep. Never gets trained, never gets taught, nothing. And that was fine because we're like an IBJF gym. We don't go outside of that rule set for the most part. We've got people that do, but at the core of our gym, they're the competitions that get put on the whiteboard. They're the competitions that will be supported, like in terms of the academy. Everyone's showing up. Now there's fucking heel hooks.
I was about to say, like, how's that going now with it changing?
Yeah, no, it's just a thing now, and it's gonna be like, what do you think as a person that teaches heel hooks and has trained with heel hooks and you're not exactly like in a you're not only doing IBJF, but what's your thoughts on that landscape now that's changed? And there was no warning. It was just like, press release, y'all fucked.
I think, you know, like seeing how the rest of the sport was going, I think if you were expecting nothing to change, it's like, it is a surprise.
Yeah.
I think that like they had to change at some stage. Like you look at how like no-gi for the IBJJF is like, it's nowhere near as popular as ADCC.
Yeah.
So like I think they just to stay competitive, they had to like I don't think that's going to be the make or break difference with whether or not like
I think they can get more competitors for sure now because of it.
Yeah. I hope so. Like I think the rule sets like it wasn't the heel hooks that I think make the rule set so differently. Like I think the way that scoring works in ADCC is really why you see so much chaos and excitement. Like Craig spoke about it recently. I think can't remember where he talked about it, but one of the big things, and this is why like we do, like I mentioned before, we do training specifically for ADCC rules, is because of, like the way scoring works is so radically different. Like if I take you down in IBJJF, all I've got to do is get your hips to the floor. But if I want to take you down at ADCC, I have to fully pin you. Like, and there's a massive difference between me getting your butt on the floor and me getting your back on the floor. Like the difference there is massive. And then so same thing with passing the guard. Like if you don't have your back on the floor when I pass your guard ADCC, like I mean, they don't actually reward points for passing the guard, but like the point still stands. It's like I have to have your back like on the floor, like at least.
It's got to be a legitimate pin.
I can't. It's not enough for me to just be past your legs. Like, you know, say so. Like someone takes like a body lock, for example, and they hop over the legs. Like if I stabilize their IBJJF, even if you're sitting up, like I can get my points. But ADCC, I fully have to have you on the floor.
Yeah, I've never thought of it like that.
And so it creates a lot more scrambles.
Yeah,
like because if like you get past my hips, it's like I'm not like
you're just not accepting it because you're like, oh well, the points are there. I'll work from here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so you're not going to take any risks. Like they cross a certain point, you don't just suddenly open up and give them an arm. Yeah. But if you've still got like, you know, like the possibility of like, you know, framing, creating space, like even when they're fully past your guard, that creates a lot of submission opportunities and that creates a lot more excitement. I think like submission, like even if you don't really know what's like going on in like terms of position, if you see someone like nearly getting their arm broken or someone trying to break someone's arm, exactly, like they understand that. It's the same way like, you know, fans watch like striking. They don't really know what's going on, but they understand someone's getting punched in the face. And so they can at least like empathize with that and they go, that's the exciting bit. Yeah.
A walk-off knockout is just very easy to understand.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you see someone just get punched in the face, lights out, but like they might not necessarily like appreciate, like,
they might
really
not appreciate that there was
stuff.
like a feint that led to that.
Exactly, or like, you know, oh, that's the combination that guy like did here, but then like this guy countered it nicely with like
he did that at the open workout, that same combination. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I think like if we can get more of that in jiu-jitsu, it'll be really good.
So what do you think that the new rules will do locally though? Like at local competitions?
I really don't think it changes too much, honestly. Like I think what actually so this has been my big, not gripe with IBJJF, but I think it's what really limited the no-gi is the reaping rules. Like, I actually think no-gi, IBJJF no-gi, if you took out heel hooks but kept reaping, is still, like, is equally as exciting. Like, I don't think it's the heel hooks that make it exciting. Like, I think, like, the reaping is really what limited it, because it really takes away a lot of opportunities for, like, control and sweeping in IBJJF.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, it's, I feel like that's really the make or break difference.
And Gordon kind of exploited that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, like I think like when you can really start to understand the fine line, you can start introducing something like saddle. But now that you can reap, like it creates opportunity for like taking it back, for example. Like reaping is not inherently like a technique you do for leg locks. It's a movement to turn someone's leg. And when like you'll see in like the UFC, for example, Paul Harris wants to set up a heel hook. The first thing he does is he's reaping.
Yeah.
Not because the reap is like anything, like it does help with setting up a heel hook, but what it does is it turns his opponent away so that way they can't punch him. So then when you like talk about like, okay, if you had reaping but no heel hooks in with like IBJJF, it's like now I can start using that to take your backs, turning you away from me. I can start coming up on single legs and double legs. Like,
yeah,
I think that's where like more of the opportunities open up and what would create more exciting matches.
I think that the reaping thing is just weird in general because
it's a poorly defined rule.
But it's like, okay, well, it's dangerous. But so if but like, let's say, like we're saying it's dangerous.
Okay,
like, we're just agreeing with it being dangerous.
Yep,
that's fine. And it's like, okay, so is a wrist lock.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are we doing here?
It fucking hurts and can break my wrist. Like my Kimura can break my arm. Like every single a knee bar break my knee.
It's like, I hope it's dangerous.
It's supposed to be. Like what we're doing is like controlled danger to like win a match.
Like, yeah, like reaping in itself isn't dangerous. There is ways to make reaping specifically dangerous in the way that people fear it, but that's hard to do. Like, and generally for me to do that, it actually requires a lot of control, which means that like the chance of injury actually goes down. Because
you've got such good control. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I think like John Danaher's talked about this a lot, and like you'll see like this is where like judo, the sport of judo changed as well, as like taking away certain uncontrolled like techniques, like anything that's like jumping.
Yeah.
Like I don't have like you don't have the ability to change direction midair, and like so jumping techniques are quite dangerous. That's why like a scissor takedown is dangerous, but I don't think reaping is like I don't think reaping's dangerous because the scissor takedown is like
a way more static position.
Exactly. Like as soon as like my feet leave the floor, I don't have much control. Like so, I'm just hoping that you don't turn in the wrong way and like break your own knee.
Yeah, and then you think like jumping guard and stuff. The other thing that you got to think is like you got no shoes on a mat. Like you don't really know exactly how that person's going to hit. You don't like, you might want to slide your foot backwards, might get like, there's so many weird variables in that. And
it happens so quickly as well. Like there's just not a lot of room. Like there's a very small margin for error. Like we talked about Adam Jones before. Like he was like the guy that like the photo got shared around from one of the pan packs is like the foot completely broken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that photo. It was like a foot that was completely dislocated, like from the shin, and I think like it got turned into like memes where people are like, "Oh, when you don't tap to full locks and stuff." But that was actually from a guy jumping close guard into Adam's shins, and it completely dislocated, like snapped his foot from the bottom of the shin. Ugh. So I think like the foot dislocated, and also the bottom of his shin broke as well. And so like and that's like the result of like jumping close guard. Like I'm totally fine with that being like, you know, like
illegal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like part of the problem I have with also those techniques is the fact that like you do something wrong and it hurts me.
Yeah.
Rather than like a lot of other things, like I feel like a lot of other things that can injure you, it's generally on me.
Yeah.
To like make like a silly mistake. Like if you put me in a heel hook and I just like I spin the wrong way, and I just break my own leg, like that's on me.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I'm suffering my own consequences, but if you do something silly, it's gonna hurt me. So I think that for multiple reasons it's not a bad idea to do away with some of those techniques.
Yeah. But yeah, then to say that like one thing's dangerous and then you couldn't do it, then it's like, okay, so let's define dangerous because it feels like everything we're doing here is dangerous. Like exactly. I've legit had like nightmares of choking somebody in training and being in a weird position. And then them, you know, you get into like some positions where like, say you'll do like a collar choke from the back. And then, but you're in turtle, your head's posted on the ground, you're staying super tight. You're like kind of just committed to that position.
Yep.
And then they could be like chilling there. the choke's not on,
But they're
or
at the-
they could be asleep and
Yeah.
dead.
There's
So
even-
it's like we are playing a gnarly game in that sense.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. There's a particular guillotine variation. Me and one of my teammates, Tim Travail, were working on this. This was maybe like 2 years ago, and we were working out like a particular reaction. Like it's like off like a guillotine, for example. Like they tell you got to pass to one side. Like if your head's on this side, you got to bring your body over to the other side when you pass. That way you can't get guillotined. We're playing with like a variation of a guillotine that even if they do that, you can still choke them.
Yeah.
And like it's basically like a high risk guillotine where instead of like being over the throat, you're on both arteries on the neck there, so it comes on much quicker.
So you're like turning around to the side almost.
Exactly, like you punch through deeper, so it's much more like a rear naked choke. So you got like a strangle rather than like a choke over the throat.
Yeah.
And so it comes on much quicker. And so we're also playing with a version of it where like if you pass to that side, you still get put out.
Yeah.
The problem is when we were drilling it, like Tim's drilling this on me, and I'm like, okay, like now I pass to that side, like so he can drill the technique. I went to sleep, and he was stuck underneath me.
Yeah, see?
Like that's a terrifying moment. Like that's a recipe for the disaster. Like
yeah, dude, and it doesn't take long. Like I had a situation like that happen at training where I was choking somebody, and then they were just underneath me, stuck like in turtle position.
Yeah,
and then luckily I let go and like checked, and it was like. Riders, you kind of let go right as somebody's like kind of about to go, and it's I was like, oh, dude. But if you're not in that mindset of like really being cognizant of what you're doing, and you're like lost red mist, like trying to fucking get the sub, like you're just hanging on to that. There's no ref there. You're just in training. Like, dude, it's not super safe. Like there's a lot of variables.
It makes me wonder with like, that baseball bat choke people will do from bottom position where they'll grab it from guard and turn fully belly down.
That's the only time I've ever been. That's like the closest I've ever been is somebody of doing that from top, man. It was gnarly.
I wonder about like that happening when like someone does that from bottom, like someone like if you did it to someone like 100 kilos, like a lot bigger than yourself, like
and they fall on you,
and you're stuck there, like you've like choked them out, but like they're on top of you and you can't let go, like.
There's some nightmare situations that can happen, man, for real. I've legitimately like had fucking nightmares around it.
I think this is an example of like we're talking about before, like celebrities bringing like people into jiu-jitsu.
We're keeping people out.
Exactly. Like we're like scaring people off. Like someone might be listening to this, heard all the prior conversation and went, oh, like, yeah, jiu-jitsu sounds awesome. God, I'm going to kill someone or get killed. Nah, never mind. I'm good.
I'm out. But look, good thing is most people do activities that could render them decapitated on a daily basis.
True.
Like Corona's a thing now.
Yeah, exactly.
It ain't safe being alive.
No.
And I'm probably gonna take the benefits of jiu-jitsu in keeping me alive over murdering me.
That's true.
But yeah, there is some weird situations that you could get into.
Oh, for sure. Jiu-jitsu is a weird sport, generally speaking.
It is a weird sport. That is true. So what do you make though of so it's funny, like I'm almost like a meme in our gym because of like the heel hook thing, because I've gone and done like Lockie's camps and shit like that. Literally, Lockie could have been teaching close guard and I still would have gone to that camp. But I just wanted to do a 10-day jiu-jitsu camp. Like, let's just get fucking one thing clear. I don't care what the fuck he was teaching. I was going to Thailand for 10 days. So I just got a bad rap. I've literally probably done fucking 2 heel hooks this entire year. And maybe fucking 20 the year before that. It's not a thing that I regularly do, but that's the fucking meme in the gym. But in my head, like I'm actually not that worried about learning that yet. I feel like I've still got so much shit to learn before I even remotely invest in that game. So I think that on the one hand, there is the argument of, I think now a lot of gyms are going to start doing heel hooks a lot earlier. Yep. I'd say I'd probably start at purple belt for people that are in like more standard Brazilian gyms.
I think with like rolling with them, yeah, for sure.
That's a good point.
I think drilling heel hooks at white belt is fine. I think it's fine though to like, like abstain from like rolling with heel hooks until purple belt level.
Abstain. I love that fucking terminology.
Sorry, I'll find a different word.
That's honestly perfect because cunts get horny over it.
Oh, they absolutely do. They like, and that's part of the problem is they they're a good tool to use. I think if you really wanted to make sure you weren't hampering your own development in jiu-jitsu, is if you want to use heel hooks, I'd focus on using them from bottom position. And I actually had this conversation with one of my students because they're like, well, how do I know when to like let go of a leg lock and go for something else? And I think like a good general rule is if like you're not actively...
That's a pretty good question, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like how do you actually choose? Because it's like you sit there and you go, well, I might have something here, but if I get up and try and pass the guard, I'm letting go of everything I might have, and I'm trying to like hope that like me passing the guard, I said to him, I think like a good general rule, at least in terms of making sure you have healthy development in jiu-jitsu, is like if you're attacking something, but you, like say for example, like you sit for a leg lock from passing the guard, and you're
Which
not...
you shouldn't do.
Yeah, well...
Unless you're in a competition.
It has its place. Like...
It's fucking annoying.
It has its place, and when you get better at it, you start recognizing when you've got like a really clean opportunity to do that, and when you don't.
No, it's a valid technique. I'm being an idiot.
But but a good general rule is like, because you don't know when that like you actually should go for it.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways to first like, you know, develop actually when like it is a good opportunity, and like, you know, also like as a good rule, generally speaking, to know when to actually come back on top, is if you're not making active progress towards like an actual leg lock from that position, like maybe like you sat for it and you're like trying to like, maybe you're trying to do what you're attempting. If you're like, it's taking a couple of seconds and you've made no progress at all, like switch up what you're doing. Like, you know, like as they say, like insanity is like, you know, doing the same thing and like expecting a different result. Like if you're sitting there and like looking for like you're trying to do the same thing, you're trying to dig the heel hook the same way, you're making no progress, give up.
Yeah.
Like either do something different or like just go back to passing the guard.
Yeah.
Like I think that's a good rule.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I think that I definitely see a lot of, you know, guys that are like white belts and blue belts and shit, and they'll just be like literally obsessed with doing heel hooks because it is, and I mean, especially a heel hook on a guy that doesn't do heel hooks. Like you could go any brown belt in a gym, and if you drill a bunch of heel hooks and you're like a blue belt, like you're probably going to be able to heel hook that dude.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you took that out of the game, like the narrower you make, I think this is probably like my headspace around jiu-jitsu is like what makes you good at jiu-jitsu is like, okay, you just start taking away more and more things, can you still compete? Yeah. So let's say you take out like all leg locks. How good are you at jiu-jitsu? Okay, you take out now all arm bars, it's only strangles that you can do. Okay, how good are you at jiu-jitsu? Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's like such a big group of people that do get so obsessed with heel hooks and shit at like such a low level because it's high percentage, you can catch higher level people. But in terms of like if you did that where you played like strip back jiu-jitsu, like you actually can't do shit. Yeah, exactly. Like and exactly that. Like that's something I spent a lot of time on as well. Like for example, like I've always competed IBJJF. Like people, I keep getting that question. They're like, oh, IBJJF has heel hooks now. Are you going to start doing IBJJF competition? Like I've always done this. I've always done it. Like I did No-Gi Worlds. Like I've done Pan Packs. I've won my division at Pan Packs a couple of times. Like I've been doing it always. But one of the big things for me now, because I feel like most areas of my jiu-jitsu are... Well, you're a black belt. Filled out to an area where I'm happy with it. Like where like exactly that. If I got like put in a competition, they said you can't do heel hooks, you can't do arm bars, something like that. Like I've got like an avenue to win every single way. The only real one I'm making sure I'm working on now is the wrestling aspect. If I was ever thrown in a competition where I had to wrestle, I've got some wrestling now, but it's not at the place that I'd like it to be where I'd be comfortable to actually like compete and just wrestle. I have to wrestle from the start. There's matches I have where like I'll wrestle at the start, and if I feel like I'm not really making any breakthroughs with like what I've got, I can still pull guard. Yeah. But I want to like make sure it's at a point where if I had to wrestle, I can. Yeah. Well, and that makes so much sense for you. Like you're a professional. Like you're a professional at jiu-jitsu. Exactly. And I want to make sure that I can also like teach wrestling as well. Like or at least like even if it's not like, you know, like wrestling for someone that wants to do wrestling competitions, but jiu-jitsu specific. Exactly. Wrestling for jiu-jitsu. Like I'd like to be able to get to that stage. And that's almost like exactly what we talked about before. We talked about like different skill sets, like teaching being its own skill set as well. It's like there's what you can do, and then there's like developing like a way to teach to other people. Yeah, no, definitely. It's funny. Everyone will be like, oh, Skinner, leg lock dude. But it's like, that's the A game that gets taken into competition. Exactly. But you're not seeing the Jeremy Skinner roll in the gym, and like you watch footage of Craig's rolls, it's like he's not leg locking people
Oh, yeah.
constantly. Like that dude's taking people's backs from everywhere. Like
Exactly.
there's just like this vast array of jiu-jitsu, and that's what when I rolled with Levi, everyone was like, "Oh, did you get berimboloed?"
It's like, no, he probably played close guard.
I'm like, dude, he armbarred me from everywhere that there's ever been a place to armbar somebody from, and they're like, oh, and it's like, yeah, well, you see this like fine. He's taking like a samurai sword into competitions, and there's like an A game that he's playing. Same with you, it's the same with Lockie, it's the same with Craig. All these guys that have that like legitimate A game that they're sort of going to, and it's like a funnel they're trying to work to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's their path of least resistance.
I think like people almost confuse like A game, like capital A, with like a lowercase a. Like they have they have A game, and then like that's it.
Yeah.
Rather than having like an A game, a B game, like
yes.
Yeah, and I think people like people criticize the meows for that over the years, for example, where like when
but
they're
I'm sure
competing,
if you rolled with them in the gym,
they go for everything.
they do whatever.
Yeah. Like for me, for example, when I roll in the gym, I rarely go for heel hooks. Like I'm trying to do everything else.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. But I think that for you, you're seeing it as like it's like a product of what you're there to do, and like you're a professional competitor. But I think just for the average dude that just wants to spend so much time focusing on that part of the sport, I personally think it stunts people's development, and I could see it stunting people's development.
It stunts development, like it definitely does. And it actually, like, I don't know if I was listening to your episode with Ari, but I haven't finished it yet, so I don't know if he ever talked about this. But him and I have talked about this as well, with like, say for example, him with the berimbolo, like, and like this relates to what we're talking about before with like, getting good at a skill set, and then like learning, like understanding how you learned that skill set so you can turn it into something else.
Yeah.
Like say for example, like Ari talked about the fact that he had some like not as much success in competition as he deserved because he was going so deep on the berimbolos. So that way, like, he could understand it so much more. And now, like, he's taken a step back from that, and like, he's now attacking a lot more things. But like, you need to go super deep on certain things, like, so you understand what it takes to get that last 5%.
Yeah.
And then it's the same with like like exactly what you're talking about, even like earlier development in jiu-jitsu. Again, like, you can go too deep to the point of like spending like too much time on it, hampers your growth in other areas. But I think it's not a bad idea to do that in at least one area of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Like, even if it's at like an early stage. I think at an early stage, you'd probably be better off to have like a general sense of jiu-jitsu. But at some stage, I think it's healthy to like go deep on something. Yeah. Because like, again, like we talk about like, high level competitors, like the best guys in the world have like at least one area that they've spent like what most people would say is like too much time on an area.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Like, so I it's one of those things where it's like, I agree, like, in certain ways, and it's also hard to give a clear answer on something like that, because there's reasons why you should work on everything, but at the same time there's also reasons why you should probably also only work on one thing. Yeah, because you can't become maybe like Gordon Ryan's aiming for that, but I'd say for most people, you can't become the best in the world at every single skill set
within the sport. Yeah,
exactly. And so like, but you want to actually make sure you have a certain skill set that can overcome someone else's like, special skill set. Yeah. So like if you think of it as like, you're looking at like, like numbers on like a character sheet for like a video game or something like that. Like, like you need to have like that attack level that like gets over like their defense level or something like that. Like you need to have like at least one area that's like that. Yeah. Even if it's at the detriment of something else. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And the other thing too, while you're saying that, I started thinking, I went through like triangles would be the first thing. Yeah. That was my first thing where I was like, I'm just real good at triangles. Yeah. But then there was a point where I'm like, I'm not doing any triangles anywhere now except for in competition. And then what that come down to was just the fact that everyone I rolled with was like, oh yeah, he can do triangles. So then that forced. So then I started doing foot locks. Yep. Completely different part of the game. And then I think that's a good combination.
Yeah. And then everyone was like, oh, you're doing heaps of foot locks. I'm like, well, I can't do triangles. Like, there's like
everyone shuts it down.
Yeah. Like, I can't do them now. No one's letting me do it. And then it's like, yeah, well, you should, like, you want to get better to where, like, you can do it no matter what. But there's only a certain, like, you can only attack a certain part of the body that's, like, made available to you,
And that kind of goes back to what we're talking as well about, like, learning and things. Yeah, like, you need to take a break from it, then you can come back to it later.
But I think that, that made sense that, I did get proficient in an area that then opened up a new subset because that was not really on the menu anymore. And then you've got to figure out like, okay, so this is not there. What is now available? Like if people aren't presenting this, what is being presented. And then again, you just go like path of least resistance. Well, like, okay, so this is here now.
Absolutely. And I think the big problem I see with new students is like them doing that. And I think it's okay. The problem is that they might be picking areas that have no semblance like to what you see at like championship level jiu-jitsu. For example, like the big one that happens is, and I'm going to piss off some 10th planet guys, but like you
Rubber
don't, well, not even rubber guard, like closed guard works, but like lockdown half guard. You don't like, you do see you do see some amounts of rubber guard at a really high level. I don't think you see like heaps of it, but you don't see any lockdown at a high level.
No.
Like you actually don't even see that at purple belt level.
Yeah.
But you'll like everyone knows the blue belt at their gym that's like got like a really good lockdown game, but it's like, it sort of stops there.
Yeah.
Like, and I think like as long as people are looking to what's working at a high level in jiu-jitsu, it's hard to go wrong. That's why like personally, like we're talking about like, having like, like learning, like, getting introduced to jiu-jitsu, I actually think it's a good idea to look at what's happening at a high level. Like, for example, when I'm teaching white belts, like, I don't teach the Americana. Like, or at least not the Americana in the classic sense that we see.
Yeah.
Like you'll see like Gordon Ryan's like Americana from the triangle, like, but that's like almost like a totally different submission.
That's a different thing, yeah.
But in terms of the Americana that we see from mount, I don't teach that. I teach the arm triangle. Because the arm triangle is a strong submission to go for from mount, but you also see it successful at a high level. Like I think what you want to be doing at an early stage is just getting introduced to high level techniques. You don't have to be learning the Berimbolo, but you should be looking at techniques that do actually have success at a high level.
What are the most high percentage techniques in your mind?
The rear naked choke's number one.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to go off the stats, I'd say like you're looking at like rear naked choke, you're looking at the triangle, you're looking at the arm bar. Kimura's up there. It's up there in terms of being like an effective breaking submission,
and it's more of a grip too. That
It's
can lead to like a lot of other things.
Exactly, but it's certainly up there as being like a submission that's got like a really strong capacity to like break the joint that it targets. I think like there's other submissions that might be like more successful, but don't necessarily like cause like have like a devastating effect. I think straight ankle locks up there, guillotines. Like anything that would be considered like, like almost like mundane jiu-jitsu. It's like there's a reason. Yeah. There's a reason why it's mundane. It works,
and it's worked for so long.
And that's why I think when people carry on about like fundamentals, they're sort of talking about it in the wrong way. Where they're like, fundamentals are important. I think like those submissions are fundamental, but you can get very, very advanced with them. So I think fundamental doesn't have to mean basic. But it has to be sort of like the root of the rest of your jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So Levi, when I was with Levi, he gave me a couple of what I would call fundamental, like ground floor tips, where I was just like, I wish I have known this for the last 4 years. Like this would have made my life different in jiu-jitsu. And it was just the smallest, most easy to digest information. And it's like, okay, I would never look past that as just fundamentals. Like there is a set of fundamental rules and laws of jiu-jitsu that you should spend your entire career on. Yeah,
exactly. And like that doesn't mean that they have to be basic or like they're not effective outside of white belt. It just means like it's a foundation like for the rest of your jiu-jitsu.
That is like the stereotype, I think. Like, whatever you learn in the fundamentals class, you kind of dump that as soon as you get into advanced.
Exactly.
Whereas, I think that, fundamentals, there's a set of fundamental techniques that you should work on forever.
And that's exactly like my aim as a coach. Like we're talking about like, like emergent sort of skill sets like that a beginner might have with like, say for example, your triangle. Like I think like, like say for example, like the triangle is like fundamental. And when you're a white belt, your triangle is probably like at like a basic level. But like you can still like use like the triangle like that you learned then all the way to a high level, and you can like adapt it and like add on to it. But then I think there's like certain areas that like
there's like a bit depth. Yeah, like how I would describe it would be like just the bit depth of an image. Like you could have an 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, and you could just keep increasing the amount of pixels. Like essentially you're looking at the same smiley face or love heart or whatever it is, but there's the first version that you start with is like just this version that is like only just visible as a love heart, and then it just gets layered and more textured and more detailed, and you constantly adding pixels, which adds clarity.
Exactly. So like you're able to smooth it out. Then maybe you're even able to add like like a greater color range, things like that. Like absolutely. But like overall, it's still like
But it's the same.
it's the same image.
It's the
yeah.
same thing. Yeah.
As opposed to like I think as we're talking about with like lockdown, for example, like sure you can get it to a certain level at a certain stage,
yeah.
but like I feel like you just have to do away with it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like I think so. If you spent more time, say for example, like another example of a classically taught half guard is say underhook half guard. You don't see that as successful at a high level. But half guard is still like a fundamental position. And a fundamental variation of half guard that you see successful still to a high level is knee shield.
Yeah.
Like either playing like the low knee shield at the hip, like the Z guard variations, like playing off like a high knee at the shoulder.
Yeah.
That's something you can learn at white belt level, and like you could use that for the rest of your career.
Yeah.
So I think like, you know, like teaching to like with those sort of things in mind is really, really important to make sure like you have like students that actually like to go back like with what we're talking about, you know, like, you know, fundamentals being treated as like basics. The problem with it being treated that way is that it's an inefficient use of time, because then the problem that you see arise is the fact that I've now got to teach you something and tell you that, oh yeah, this is fundamentals, when really what I mean is it's shit outside of white belt.
Yeah.
And then at some stage you have to unlearn that technique and then learn something new, rather than in like if you can just start learning new information all the time and not have to unlearn things. Because like, you know, say for example I teach you an Americana, 6 months from now I say, yeah, you got to stop using the Americana, it doesn't work. It's like, why did you look at me and you go, why did you teach that to me in the first place?
Yeah.
Like if you knew it was going to be shit in 6 months, why would you teach it to me? So like now you've got to like break through like that habit of going for an Americana from mount.
Yeah.
And like start trying to go for other things.
And you definitely have to break the habit of going for it while you're in closed guard. Exactly. So like if I start teaching you arm triangle from mount straight away, like, okay, your arm triangle is not going to you kind of don't really have to go away from that ever.
Exactly. Like maybe you don't have like a black belt level arm triangle, but if your intuition is to like go for that every single time you're in mount, that's a strong start. It's the same way, like, you know, people recognize like rear naked chokes at like a great submission to learn at white belt, and it's a great submission to learn at black belt, and like you never do away with that. So I think like what we hopefully will see in jiu-jitsu is deviating away from what's classically been shown as fundamentals, and like we start getting a little bit better at it. And I think as well,
I like that.
Yeah.
Like that, just the distinction that you've created around that, because I think that my idea of fundamentals was, this is the shit that you end up ditching, and then you don't really pay attention to it at all.
Yeah.
So I think you're right about that.
Exactly. Like the same way, for example, like and I think this is like reasonable, as like, you know, like heel hooks isn't like fundamentals. But I think like, you know, like there is a certain level of heel hook defense and offense that is fundamental, like is sort of like a foundational skill. Like, sorry, I'll be more clear on that. Like, I don't think heel hooks are basic, but like I think like maybe like heel hook defense can be like fundamental, and like it's an important skill set to have at some stage. So I think like you can start learning about heel hooks without having to become a heel hook master. Yeah,
and I think that there's probably concepts within it, like holding a knee line.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's going to be applicable to basically like any leg entanglement ever.
Actually, I'd even go so far as to say it's applicable to joint locks. Like, so if we want to start talking about like you know, arm bars, for example, like I need to have your elbow like past my hips at a certain point. Like I need to be controlling like the major joint, like where that limb like connects with your torso, for example. Like I need control over your hips in some capacity. Actually, I'd even go so far as to say that to have a strong finish, I need your hips on the floor for a heel hook, the same way I need your shoulders on the floor for an armbar. Like a good general principle is like if your hips come off the floor for a heel hook, I have significantly less braking potential. Same way if I want to finish an armbar. Armbar from closed guard is good. It's even better when I can go from closed guard armbar and put you on your back. Yes. Like, so like you can actually take a lot of these principles and apply them to joint locks, generally speaking. Like like, so you can it still follows like a lot of like fundamental principles, I think. Yeah. Okay. That's real interesting. Yeah. I like that. That's a cool break. That's a cool breakdown. Like I'm just in my head like, yep. Everything he's saying checks out. And I've never thought of any of it. And that's kind of goes into what I meant before with like we're seeing like an evolution in jiu-jitsu, or we're starting to understand more about what's going on in this, like in the actual grappling art, and how we can actually turn that into a proper coaching program where like I think we're going to start seeing more teams. Like that's what I mean. Like overall, like at least that's my perspective is like looking at where the sport's shifting towards. Yeah. Is we're just getting an overall greater grasp on what's going on in the sport. Yeah. And able to like, you know, start being able to like simplify things in that sort of way and still stay accurate.
Yeah.
Whereas before, like, we can simplify things, but it's not quite accurate because we don't have enough information to sort of like follow what the common threads are between a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, that's what I mean when I say like, this is where I think like the sort of the sport is going.
Yeah. And you are right. Like you kind of you're only as good as the team that you're with, essentially.
Exactly.
Like you're only as good as not only the coaching that you receive, that coaching is then dependent on the partners that you train with to implement that coaching.
Absolutely. Like, for example, like myself, like I was training in Newcastle and, I had a frank conversation with Luke where I just said like, hey, like I want to take jiu-jitsu seriously. I'm thinking about moving down to Melbourne and training with Lachlan, and like Luke's like, absolutely, go for it. And then like similar as well, like listening to like both Ari and Levi talk about like their journey coming up. It's like you've got to seek out like that sort of capacity to have like the training you want.
Yeah.
Like you can start to create it for yourself, but it can be difficult if
it's limiting.
Exactly. Like especially if the environment's like a certain way, maybe the people around you don't have those aspirations. Like you want to sort of surround yourself with people that are working towards the same goals. So that way, like you can like just make those adjustments needed.
What was it like when you moved to Melbourne?
It was good. I knew what I was in for. So Michaela had originally invited me to come down and just like train for a week. Like you just like, just crash on my couch or whatever. And so like I visited like for about a week, and I did a couple of trips after that across a year, like periodically visiting. First time I visited, I think Craig had just gotten his black belt and he was about to be on EBI for the first time. And
oh, wow.
So this is actually, I think most people that know Craig don't actually realize he was on EBI before he had the 80cc run.
Yeah.
Yeah, like most people, they go like, oh yeah, like that time he fought Gordon. It's like, no, there was an EBI before that
he did before.
Yeah, I think opening round
was that when he heel hooked everyone like instantly, or was that the Craig run?
That's the one he had against where he went to Gordon Ryan in the final. So he had a time before that. He opening round he heel hooked Nathan Orchard, and then the second match he had a match against Dara O'Connell, an Irish competitor. And that was where they had like a funny restart where Craig had him in the armbar fully extended, and Eddie just called stop because he thought Dara tapped. But then they restart, and then Craig heel hooked him, and then I think Craig fought. I think Gordon was actually in this tournament as well, but he didn't actually go against Gordon. He went against Wagner Hoscher in the semifinals. And lost in overtime.
Yep. I do remember.
Yeah, that. So this was like I trained with Craig like just as he was getting ready for that. I think he was like competing on that in like 2 weeks, and so like I'd never been exposed to a training environment for like a professional sort of like, like a pro training camp essentially for like these sort of events. Like I was from Newcastle. There was like not really anyone like that was competing internationally there. We had one of our guys, Dicko, he was doing, I think he was like, getting ready to do gi worlds, but like the idea of like one of our guys like going and doing gi, like, doing the world championships, like that was like crazy.
Yeah.
But then like, we're talking about like going down to Melbourne and like seeing a training environment where like everyone's getting ready to do that. And so like that was a massive eye opener for me, because like this was the first time I'd really seen like people doing like really dedicated positional training. We'd done some, but like not to like, it wasn't anywhere near as important and like a critical part of the training session as it was down in Melbourne at Absolute. So that was really interesting to see. And I remember rolling with Lachlan and just getting absolutely demolished.
Really?
Like with like embarrassing stuff. Like Lachlan isn't normally the one to try and get you the humiliating techniques, but he had this one technique. What was it called? Like Statue of Liberty or something like that, where like he basically tries to twist you from top half guard.
Oh no!
And he did that to me twice, and I was like, "This is like, what is going on?" And that was one of those things where I think it was like that first training session, and I was like, "I have to come back here."
Yeah.
So like, straight away I knew like, okay, this is the place I've got to be. This was before like I wasn't thinking about moving down to Melbourne at any stage. But like that, just like straight away, I'm like, I've got to do it. And so I'd visited a couple of times since then, but I remember like just like I was a month out from moving down to Melbourne properly. Like I'd trained there a couple of times, and 80cc 2017 was happening. I watched Craig submit Leandro Low, and I thought, I'm never going to see Craig again. Like I was just about to move down, and lo and behold, like Craig was just off traveling, doing his seminars for months and months on end.
That was what. That's one of the crazy things about jiu-jitsu is that just one submission over one dude can completely change your life.
Yeah.
And like, look at Lockie, man. What he did at 80cc changed his life, changed his kid's life, changed his wife's life.
Yeah.
Didn't even win.
Didn't even win.
No.
He lost in the semifinals, and like, what does everyone remember from that year? Not the fact that he lost to Lucas Lepre first round of his weight division, not the fact that he like Gordon Ryan double golded, and I think Gordon nearly submitted everyone. Did he submit everyone in his weight division? I think Gordon submitted everyone in his weight division too.
Yeah, he didn't. He just didn't submit Buchecha, right?
Yeah, and that was in the open weight of the absolute.
Yeah.
So he submitted everyone in his weight division, which I think has only ever happened like 3 times.
No
at
one
86.
talked about it.
No one cares.
No one gives a fuck.
No one gives a
Everyone's
shit.
Lockie.
Lockie Hill, 3 giant
Three
guys,
huge
and that's what matters.
Yeah. It is pretty insane. Do you remember when you rolled with Craig the first time?
I remember doing back control positional training with him, and it's funny because his Wagner Hoscher match that he had, I think it was last year, where he rear naked choked Wagner Hoscher in submission underground in overtime. So there was a submission that Craig's was working on in the training camp that I was there for, and he got me with it a few times. Basically, what he does when he's on someone's back, he's got his seatbelt, and basically locks a full figure 4 around your head and arm, like from the seatbelt, and he's trying to basically arm triangle you from the back.
Really?
But the idea is to get you to open up. So like you've got him on your back, you've got the arm crossed over, and he's forcing you to open up so you don't get strangled, and then he shoots right around your neck.
Yeah.
And he was also working. I remember there was like a back control escape he was working through, like all of that camp, like leading up to it. And I think he was trying to do it against Wagner, but like I think it relied on like people not wanting to let you get like the body triangle, like the side that locks like down on the floor.
Yeah.
And so it was relying on that. And Wagner just did not care. Like he was happy like to either let his ankles break or whatever, like if it got into that position.
That's
I remember a lot about like the lead up to that. It just like stood out to me quite a fair bit.
It must have been a pretty cool experience for you, like just to get in there and just like immerse yourself in the culture.
Oh, absolutely. It was a really cool experience. Like, it's funny, like the people I met on that trip and just like how much of an impact they've had like on my journey at the time. Like I think like Ben Hodge, for example, like he just had like a really serious staph infection, like where like it was like actually eating away like the inside of his armpit. He'd just come back from that and he was just getting into training. I remember rolling with him. There's James Tomlinson as well, who runs Bulletproof for BJJ. Like JT, he's like had a massive influence on me as well. Still like a major part of my jiu-jitsu journey. So like it's just it's interesting to reflect on like the impact that people can have on your lives, and like not knowing how much of an impact they can have.
And what about your jiu-jitsu? Like what was it like to? Could you just watch yourself improve out of sight?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it just totally changed everything. Like even just like seeing the way that they were training, I'm like, oh, that's the way I'm meant to train. Like not what I was doing where like I rock up, I just drill a little bit and then like, I just go and roll. Like they've got really dedicated training. Like, when it came to like, like we're doing drilling now, and like it's one of those things where a lot of the times with the pro sessions, what we do is we do the first half an hour, you just drill whatever you're working on. I'm like,
I'm not working on anything.
I'm not working on anything. I'm doing heel hooks and whatever Luke showed in class.
Yeah.
Like so that was like a very new experience for me, where it was like I was working on like leg locks at the time, but
it was almost like you were just in high school and then you went to Harvard or something.
It was like I went to like primary school and then went to Harvard. Like in terms of just the difference in terms of like dedicated styles of training. Like Luke's fantastic. Like in terms of everything he like has going on at the gym, but like his focus just isn't competition jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like he's very much self-defense focused, and that's why for me I think it was
such an academy. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think like the fact that his focus is self-defense is why there was such a big leap. Like it's not the fact that like his gym's like fantastic for exactly what he wants to work on, but like it's the same way like like just if you're training at a place where their focus is different, like you like to your own, like it's something needs to change.
Yeah.
Like that's why like I still go back there and like train all the time with Luke, because like he's a great coach, has fantastic insights. Like I'm trying to bounce ideas off him all the time about like different perspectives about how to run like a fundamentals training program, because he's just got such amazing insights.
Yeah, and you want to talk about like an aggregation of data, like he would have so much data over so many years.
Exactly. He's got such an amazing perspective on how to teach people like jiu-jitsu and but it's just like a different style of jiu-jitsu that he's focusing on.
Yeah.
And so like he's just such an amazing resource as like a coach. Like even if like like he's not focusing on competition jiu-jitsu, he's still watching everything.
Yeah.
Like it's like, and that's kind of why I mentioned before, like he's a martial arts nerd. He's watching all the UFCs, he's watching all of jiu-jitsu. Even though it's not his primary focus, he still just wants to absorb all of it. Kind of like as if like self-defense jiu-jitsu is his focus, and like the competition jiu-jitsu is a bit of a hobby for him in that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But then to go to Melbourne, it's like the objective of that crew is just so different.
Exactly.
And it was very aligned with like where you wanted to go.
Exactly. And that's why like when like I had that conversation with Luke where I said like, oh, this is where I want to take my jiu-jitsu and this is what I'm thinking of doing, he's like, absolutely go for it. Because like he totally understands the fact that like there's just different focuses like and different like approaches to training, like depending on what you want to do.
But so it was a pretty
quick decision.
But the progress that you made though, when you got there, like it was just bang, you were improving instantly.
Absolutely. Like we talked about a little bit before with learning. One of the things that it did was it really helped me, like even if I knew what I sort of wanted to do from a position, it allowed me to really clearly define what I want my jiu-jitsu to be and like what each like sort of step of jiu-jitsu, like say for example, like what I want to do from half guard, like I've got a very clear idea of exactly what I'm looking for every time, while before it might have been a little bit vague. Like I know I want to go for a kimura, I know I want to go for a leg lock, I know there's a triangle setup, but this gave me an opportunity to really clearly define where those opportunities are and how to create them. And like it really just overall lets you define your jiu-jitsu a lot more clearly. Like, that makes sense. Because I'd feel like, so if I'm in half guard, no gi, like I can kind of I got in my head what I'd do, where I would not say I'm like an expert in any of those. You know what I mean? I don't have reactions on reactions on reactions. Exactly.
I've got reactions, but you know, once you spend the more time in those positions, you've got reaction.
Exactly. And like you're in a position where you can actually map that out. Like before we were talking about like principles, for example, like you're in a position where I can
I don't have any of those.
Exactly. Like that's the reason why like I understand, for example, head in front of hips means I'm attacking the upper body, head over hips is attacking the legs. It just puts you in a position where you can work those things out. So what does it mean then to get your black belt in jiu-jitsu after this? How long has your total career been? Pretty much dead on 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
What was it like to get that? Because it was last weekend, right?
The weekend before. Yeah. So fresh black belt of 2 weeks.
Yeah. What was the meaning that came from that? And was it different to what you thought? Is it something that you'd built up?
It is certainly something I'd built up. Like it certainly means a lot to me. I'm really fortunate that I actually had one of my teammates there, Dan Schwart, get his black belt as well, because Dan was quite tearful. And I feel like Dan did a fantastic job of like sort of expressing what I felt. I knew I wasn't going to tear up, but him actually tearing up made me tear up a little. He didn't tear up. He cried, but like it made me tear up, and I was like, okay, like that's exactly what I'm feeling is what he's projecting.
Yeah.
But he just did a better job of showing it, because like I think it's something where even if you're quite cynical about jiu-jitsu, like maybe like, oh yeah, I'm just sort of training jiu-jitsu. It's like if you spend that much like time of your life like working on one thing, it has to mean a lot at some stage.
Yeah.
Like 10 years of anything just is like really important to you.
Yeah, and there's just this weird undercurrent that counts for so much that you just can't see.
Absolutely.
And like, so even my best friends, one of my coaches, Shane, he got his black belt at the end of last year. And I was fucking tearing up.
Absolutely.
I was just like, I was so happy. And, you know, like I'd only been around for 4 of the 9 years that he's on, you know, doing it.
But 4 years is a long time of training too.
Yeah, true.
Like, yeah.
But you know, like to have the level of emotion that I'd had and like only been there for a fraction of the journey that he'd been on. So there is like a weird undercurrent of that, because it's a symbol. It's just a concept in itself. Here's a black belt that you get for this.
Exactly.
But there is something pretty deep in that.
Exactly. Like it's interesting because, like, you know, a black belt's not meant to be a signal that you've completed jiu-jitsu, but it's still like a really powerful symbol. I'm still, like, at least for myself, trying to work out exactly what should define like a black belt. Like whether or not like it's, you know, you've got a fundamental understanding of the basics. Like I know Lachlan, his focus for a black belt, it's not necessarily like a definition you could apply to everyone. I think like that's quite hard to do. Like in terms of like, you know, say for example, like if you became like a black belt coach, like you couldn't follow Lockie's definition necessarily, because like Lachlan's definition is he looks at like where people are at now and where he was at when he got his black belt and how they compare to that.
That's
like,
interesting.
Like, and like, so that's like obviously like a very personal definition for Lachlan.
Yeah.
Which to me actually makes the black belt also worth more, because like then it sort of means like I've got a personal connection to my black belt as well as he's got a connection to it as well, which I think is like it's an interesting symbolic relationship there, which I think is quite cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I never
it's-
thought of that.
Yeah, like based on his definition, I think it's like really interesting, and it just made it a lot more meaningful. Like, I think, every black belt, like, I mean, I'm sure most people get like, like some kind words from their coach, like when they get graded. And I think like it's because like black belts are so much rarer in jiu-jitsu, you really get to get like quite an interesting perspective from your own coach, where they start talking about your jiu-jitsu and like sort of like your journey, and like it's quite emotional hearing about it from a different person.
Yeah.
Like you have an idea of like what you've been doing in jiu-jitsu, but like
Yeah.
to hear it from someone else,
a third
like
party.
exactly, and hear it from someone that like has been so influential to your own journey. Yeah, I feel like I'm not very good with like putting like emotion, like anything emotional into words, but it certainly was like an emotional experience for me.
Yeah, and did it mean what you thought it would mean, or was it more or less fulfilling in a way? Because you're right, like you get your black belt and then you fucking roll again. It's just the same. It's the same shit. Like you're still the exact same person that you were when the belt was put on you, but there's definitely meaning that is attached to it.
I think it's like you're absolutely correct, because like really what it is it's a plot on a trajectory essentially.
Yeah.
Like, and so even though like maybe you're not a different person like the day before or the day after, it's a symbol that you're a different person to what you were 2 years ago. So like if you think about, and I think like when you get to black belt, because you've been training for so long, typically you do have the perspective to think about it like that, rather than maybe like blue belt, for example. I was really excited to get my blue belt, and I did think like, oh, suddenly like I'm better at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But like because like I've been training so much longer now, like I know that it's meant to be a symbol of like the trajectory of your journey.
Yeah. Would you perfect world, you keep belts or you ditch belts in jiu-jitsu?
I think they have their value even right now. I think there needs to be almost like a shift in definition of like what the belts are meant to be for. Like you look at something like judo, where they have like a much clearer definition of the belts. I still think belts are useful though. Like I think within a gym,
Yeah.
like, and this is like talking about like in like as you said, like perfect world, where like we all like trained and like or like everyone like that started at a gym stays at that gym.
Yeah.
You have like as long as the coach has a clear definition, like the belts do mean something within the gym. I think like cross continental they don't have the same sort of weight.
Yeah.
Like for example myself, like my match this weekend, like I'm going against a brown belt, I'm a black belt, but like when I was a brown belt I was competing against black belts. When I was a blue belt I was competing against black belts. Like I think when it comes to competition, like yeah, like it's a bit of a different sort of like it's quite different there. I'd like to see for jiu-jitsu actually almost like the wrestling approach, where you qualify for certain divisions. Like you could be like a Division 1 competitor, a Division 2 competitor, so on and so forth.
Yeah, that just opens up the fucking sandbagging thing so much though.
Yeah.
But I guess you kind of can do that in belts too.
Yeah, exactly. Like it definitely happens with belts. That's why I feel like a lot of the time as well, like it's hard to really like people often talk about this with like world championships and stuff. Like it's almost a joke in a way, the idea of having like blue belt world champion. Like it's still important because it doesn't mean that they're not good, but like it's weird to say like someone's a blue belt world champion when there's a there's a purple belt world champion.
So right.
And then there's a brown belt world champion, and then there's a black belt world champion.
Yeah.
Because like being a brown belt world champion, even though it is so close to black belt, to be a black belt world champion doesn't just mean that you have to beat like all the other black belts within that 2-year slot around you. You've also got to beat all the other black belts that have been around for 10 years that are still competing.
Yeah.
Like brown belt, you've got like that 2-year slice
Yeah.
where you're competing against like the other brown belts around that area. You're not competing against every other brown belt that's ever been. You're competing against the ones that are competing at that stage.
That's so true.
So like I really feel like over like the belts with competition, like the definitions of being a different like a world champion really, really shift. Like for example, like my understanding, like based on like especially like when Levi's talking about as well, like world championships, being really good at white belt almost comes down to just who's training more.
Yeah, 100%.
Like blue belt's a different story, but then like over time when you get to black belt, the definitions of being a world champion and like the definitions are totally different.
Yeah, like you are the best in the world.
Exactly. Like when you start looking at brown belt, for example, it starts to be more about like less about like it's more about like how you've plotted your skill sets over time. Blue belt's more about like how good are you at one really specific area. Like so the definitions across the different world championships are quite interesting. And then like black belt is like just a whole other level.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like 2 separate careers.
Yeah, exactly. Like actually you'll even see, I think Gordon Ryan talked about that with his brother Nicky Ryan, where like Nicky's a black belt now, but he was talking about the fact that you shouldn't really count any matches you've had up until you're competing at black belt.
Mm.
Like, you should treat them as two totally different careers, almost like
It's
amateur
like an apprenticeship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Like
Amateur pro.
exactly. So yeah, so I'd be really interested to see like how like belt definitions change in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be tough though, because they're quite established in the sport. We need like an organization to come along that's going to create clear definitions, and then ones that people actually agree with. And then also like see if like, if that definition of belts actually applies to competition, or if we need to redefine how we organize competition.
Yeah. And then like just the subset of people that compete in jiu-jitsu
Exactly.
compared to just people who do jiu-jitsu in general.
Exactly.
It's like a totally different deal again.
Yeah, like jiu-jitsu is an interesting martial art in the fact that the sport itself actually isn't based around competition. Like it's quite a consumer level sport where like you have a lot of hobbyists, but you look at something like judo, anything like wrestling, just anything like that.
Yeah, it's
basically,
like mainly competitive. Like
Yeah.
you get into it to be competitive, kind of.
exactly, like they're state sponsored because they're all Olympic sports. Jiu-jitsu isn't. It's quite commercial.
Did jiu-jitsu not just get announced for the...
No.
Was that
You got
like
April, you got
Fools?
fooled, bro.
Yeah. I was like, was that April Fool's? Just let me
Yeah.
check. Yeah.
I
okay.
think if you read into it, there was a bunch of
Yeah, I feel like it
more
probably...
overt jokes. Like the
Yeah,
headline
okay.
itself was good, but
Yeah, I just saw the thing and did the scroll, and I was like, I feel like this was right around April 1st.
it's the downside of being in Australia. April 2nd, we're still getting the April Fool's
That's
jokes.
probably what it was. It's crazy that jiu-jitsu is not in the Olympics.
So my understanding for criteria for an Olympic sport is it needs to like have less of like a dominant country for the sport, as well as I think they need to have a non-profit organization like heading the sport. So like
Which
IBJJF
is not the IBJJF.
IBJJF is so far removed from being non-profit.
That
It's a
is
joke.
fucking funny.
I looked up the other day, like I just got like I was like, okay, cool. Like if I want to be able to get my degrees on my black belt, like I should probably register with the IBJJF, because otherwise they don't recognize it. Then like you can't have students that can like sign up for the IBJJF if you don't get recognized from them. And I'm like, okay, well, what does it take to get signed up with the IBJJF as a black belt?
Cash.
It's like $400, and I'm like,
Fuck all that.
all right, I'll do it in a few weeks.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
like I'll scrounge up some pocket money.
Yeah, fuck all that.
It's like you've got to pay $400 flat. I think you've got to do like a rules meeting that you've got to pay for. Then you've got to do your first aid course. Isn't so bad, but like it's still just like it's okay. The key, it's
Yeah.
cash.
Yeah, what are we up to here?
Yeah.
Fucking hell. So this weekend, Classic Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep.
I won't be there, unfortunately. I'm going away racing, fucking 8-hour motorcycle race. Don't know why I'm doing that. But I went to the last show, and Tom, fucking kudos, mate. It was a brilliant show. I really, really, really enjoyed it. Jiu-Jitsu in my backyard of the Gold Coast, Australia. How you feeling coming into it? How long has it been since you competed?
I haven't competed in nearly a year and a half.
It's
So
been a hot minute.
yeah, exactly. It's been a little while. Like last match came off a win. Like so I don't get too nervous when I compete anyway. Like I know like the moment, like I was probably more nervous for this than I have been for competition.
Yeah.
Like in like recent years. So like I don't think I'm gonna be like too bad when I come to actually competing this weekend. As long as I like make sure I'm like training hard before it, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah, that's like your metric of like, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Like I find that like if I train hard right before competition, like I'm fine. It's when like I have a break and I think like people like to dial down before competition. Like I want to make sure I'm like rolling as hard as possible the day before.
Yeah.
Just so I like just remove that disconnect between like what competition is and like what training is.
Yeah.
So
And the thing is, like with that, is the best bit of advice I ever got for competing was from Craig.
Yep.
And he was just like, and it's the most Craig advice ever. He was just like, don't do anything different.
yeah.
He's like, do you listen to music before you roll in the gym? And I was like, no. He's like, okay, don't do that. And then he's like, have you rolled really good with somebody after a really hard roll when you were really tired and you had your minute 30 break? And I was like, yeah, I've done that. He's like, so roll really fucking hard right before your first match, and then roll really hard in your match, and then roll really hard. He's like, just don't do anything different. Like there's nothing here that needs to change. Because I was listening to fucking Metallica and I was getting all psyched up and I was just so much different shit, and I was like psyching myself out of these competitions. And as soon as I took on that advice, it seemed to go a lot better for me.
And I think part of it as well is because people go like they have how they train, and like they set sort of a standard for their training, and then they go and compete, and they realize that like the intensity, the standard for competition is very different, and they think that like, okay, I've got to psych myself up, competition's something separate, when really the problem is with their training, and they need to train how they're going to compete.
Yeah.
Like you know, they need to make that adjustment there.
Yeah.
Like, because if they feel like, oh, but I don't, I don't push myself hard enough in training, and therefore like I need to up the intensity for competition. It's like, no, it means you probably won't you need to push harder in training, so that way you're pushing at a level that you need to for competition.
Well, in motocross, the guys that race, their training days are almost always harder than the race days.
Yeah, exactly.
Constantly harder than the race days. Like that should be like the easy day where you've kind of got less physically to worry about, because you've got more of a mental load.
Yeah, like exactly that. Like, like competition preps, like I'd say it's something that honestly, it's like it started 10 years ago for me. Like, so like you need to be making sure that all your training is leading up to the competition, like the right way. And I don't think I can add much more to that.
Yeah, no. That makes so much sense.
I think just competition needs to be simplified.
Yeah.
Like you just need to make sure you're training how you intend to compete, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and then just go and pull the trigger in the same way.
Exactly. Like it shouldn't be something where you have to like psych yourself up for competition, because that's how you do something silly. That's how you
get adrenaline dump.
You get an adrenaline dump. Exactly. Like if you psych yourself up for competition, actually like pumping the music and everything, like I think Nicky Rod is actually probably someone that does psych himself up before training, but that's about it.
He probably does the same thing in the training room though.
Oh yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
For Polaris, like we were like chilling out there, and he's like, someone blast some DMX for me or whatever it was, and like so I'm standing there holding his phone up, playing his music for him while he's psyching himself up, like. But I feel like that's how he trains.
I feel like too though. So this is probably a good point to bring up. Like that's my anecdotal experience. Like I was a white belt when Craig gave me that advice.
Yeah.
So like I didn't have a wealth of my own independent knowledge that I could apply to that situation. Like I was searching for knowledge because I didn't have enough of it myself,
Yeah.
So I think that when you get to the level where you're like a black belt, you've probably done so many competitions where you have listened to music. It does get you in a great mood. It does like there's not a competition anxiety that you're trying to like squelch out of the way, and then you can embrace competition more. You can listen to dope music. You can so it's different strokes for different folks. But my anecdote was more around like, I guess to add the caveat, like I was just a white belt that didn't have a lot of information at that point, and that helped me at that time because it simplified the process. But as someone at your level, like you said, it's 10 years of preparation essentially to get you to this point. So you could do whatever you want to do that makes it, comfortable.
Like we were talking about like the music just before. Like for example, I'll listen to music, but I don't listen to anything over the top. And the reason I like to listen to the music is because I want to create a barrier between myself and like the audience and things like that.
Yeah.
Like because when I train, there's no audience. Like it should be relaxed. So I listen to music because like I listen to relaxing music because then I'm thinking about the music instead, or I'm thinking about the flow of jiu-jitsu. I'm not thinking about like the hype of competition, the crowds, the excitement.
Yeah.
Like trying to create that barrier.
Yeah. What do you think about just the fact that you can be flown up by a promotion and do a super fight in Australia? Like to me, that seems like a real big step forward in Australian Jiu-Jitsu.
Exactly.
The COVID thing, big time L for a bunch of people in a bunch of ways, but it's forced some creativity within the industry. It's given the opportunity, like Taliesin being the main event of the last event was fucking insane. Like that was that was an incredible display of jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely.
And to have that locally, like I could drive from my house and watch that, like that was sick as fuck. Even the fact that it's on the pay-per-view and it's like at night, you can watch it. If you're not on the Gold Coast, you can like literally sit down and enjoy jiu-jitsu here. It's like it's got like more meaning to it. You're not doing it at 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning because it's you can
plan an evening around it.
Yeah. So I think from your point of view, is it cool to have that now that we can actually do that?
Absolutely, and that's sort of what we talked about before. Like it's good to see jiu-jitsu moving in a professional direction. So it's great to see that with classic jiu-jitsu that they're like able to take those steps to make this sport more professional and like basically make the sport like the way it should be. And like elevate it up to like like the same level as like other sports. So that's really fantastic to see. Like I think they're going to have a fantastic event, and especially as well with the live stream. Like it's good to have like the fact that they'll be able to have a live stream for the event, just like any other professional event will have. I think it helps. I think it lends itself to the sport to be able to do that, because then it means the sport can get shared with more people, and that's really what's going to help keep driving the sport.
Yeah.
Is like accessibility.
Yeah. And to add a personal note to that as well. So I got 2 guys competing from my gym. So I got Hennon and Sean. Been training hard as fuck with those boys, and there's like a top-down effect that happens when you've got an event like that. So you've got Classic Jiu-Jitsu this Saturday. There's these guys that are on that card, but every single one of those guys has training partners. Every single one of those guys has a gym, that there's a vibe of, like the jiu-jitsu vibe is elevated within every gym that's on that card, because all of these guys are getting ready for this sick event. It's going to be live streamed. So like that literally elevates. Like I've improved because of Sean's training that he's put me through. Yeah. I've improved because of Hennon's training that he's put me through. So there's such a crazy like top-down effect that events like this have on the Australian scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that effect would be happening for every Polaris.
Oh, for sure.
That effect would be for every EBI. You know what I mean? So we're feeling that effect. Like that does, you want to talk about a butterfly effect, that does lift the level.
And that's exactly what I was saying with like moving down to Melbourne, because like you want to make sure like, like if, say for example, Craig's competing on whatever event's coming up, Lachlan's competing on whatever event's coming up, it makes just the rest of us hungry for it. And so I think like similar sort of thing will happen like here on the Gold Coast. Is like we have Classic Jiu-Jitsu on, and you got the best guys from all the gyms competing on this event. Makes the rest of them hungry for it, and they're going to be pushing to make sure that their jiu-jitsu is on a level where they get to compete on these sort of events.
Yeah. What was my next? Oh, your seminars.
Yep.
So what are the outlines for the seminars that you've got while you're up here? So and what are you going to be teaching?
I'll just make sure I grab my
you got your
note, just so I don't miss any
sheet.
Make sure I don't miss any seminars. So we're doing a seminar, 5 seminars total. So we've got Flow, Arte Suave, as well as we've got
read the dates, read the times.
Oh, okay,
let people know.
All right, so tonight 5:30 we're at Flow, so we're going to be doing
in Cooley.
Yeah.
Coolangatta, yeah.
Yep. So we're going to be doing some leg locks tonight. We're pretty much going to be doing leg locks for all of them, but we're doing like different permutations of like the topics. Like for example, like Arte Suave tomorrow night, we're going to be looking more at trying to go from like defense into offense when it comes to leg locks. So like focusing more around that. While tonight, for example, we're looking a bit more at open guard entries into leg locks and attacking from those positions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, we're going to be following. Would it be easy to go off that one? Awesome. All right. So tomorrow night will be at 5:30. Arte Suave. How do you pronounce that? Wollongabba. There we go. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. So that'll be on the leg lock defense and counter attacks.
Yeah.
Then Sunday we're doubling up. So in the morning we're going to be at Full Metal Jiu-Jitsu in Burleigh
That's
at 10 a.m.
literally just there.
You could literally throw a rock there.
Yeah.
We nearly accidentally stumbled into there. So similar sort of thing. When I was talking to Jugs, he wanted like similar sort of thing where we're looking at more like open guard leg locks, looking at more like contemporary entries into these leg lock positions.
Yeah.
And then pretty much straight after that, we'll be going to Team Compton Training Center, and that's at Northgate. So I actually haven't spoken to Elliot there yet. We're going to plan out exactly what we're doing. But we're still going to be looking at leg locks, but probably it likely will be like a similar vein to the other two. They might want a bit more like leg lock defense. They might want like entries from like certain areas, and so that's going to be at the 5:30 on the Sunday, and then 4 o'clock on the Sunday. Is that it? Okay, sweet. 4 o'clock on the Sunday. And then Monday, the last one's going to be a Combat Training Center at 5:30. So that's Varsity Lakes, yeah.
Shout out Combat, one of our sponsors.
And I actually, I think I did my first seminar there. That
was the old one. You haven't been to the new one. That was Apex Training Academy, I'm pretty sure.
And that's where we first met.
Yeah.
So, and that was your first taste of leg locks, was it?
No, Lockie's.
Lockie's was the first one. Okay.
Yeah, literally I did like Lockie's seminar, Lockie's 10-day camp in Thailand. And then the next time I did any leg locks other than just a straight foot lock was going and doing your deal. So
awesome. You going to be there on Monday or?
I was thinking I might be able to come and make that Monday. What are you doing like in between? We should definitely train.
I'm keen to. I think Sunday we're pretty.
We should train like Monday if you want to do like a morning session or something.
Yeah, I'm keen for a morning session. Does that sound good? Awesome.
Sweet. We covered everything.
I think so.
Have you enjoyed it?
I've loved it.
I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on.
This was worth the hype.
Yeah. Oh, hype. I don't know about hype.
It was hyped up for me.
Yeah. No. I'm super. I knew it'd be good with
Yeah.
you as well. Like, because we always sort of nerd out on jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely.
I enjoy. I just hope I don't come across. I'm just a humble blue belt, just doing my thing. I'm trying to hang with the big dogs. I always get. I was talking to Ari after the Levi thing, and I was like, "Fuck, it's so cringy." For me, even to like literally talk about jiu-jitsu, like offer any anecdotes, because it's so the fucking league. So I'm fully aware of the league that
I
I'm
feel
in.
the same way when like knowing that someone like Craig exists or Lockie exists. Like I'm like the same thing. I'm like, oh, do I even deserve an opinion?
Yeah. Oh, how do you think I feel doing a fucking podcast with Lockie? I'm just like, oh, all right, what do we talk about here? But yeah, no, super keen. I wish I was going to be there on Saturday, but best of luck, best of skill.
Thank you.
I'll be catching a replay of it, and then yeah, hopefully we'll get to train together on Monday.
Awesome. Thank you, Jace.
Appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.